get it right. And every time he's like, no, wait, stop. I think we can go a little bit deeper. Just one more, please. And and yeah, it's some of the best TV I think I've ever been involved in making. Um, the other episode that I really enjoyed quite a bit was um, the anger management. I think it was just a really fun episode for a lot of reasons. You know, we finally reveal the world of troll hunters to Barbara, which was one of those sort of things like, can we do that? Are we allowed to do that? But then, of course, we do it in the most crazy, sort of unexpected way. So that was a lot of fun. I think also there's a lot of references that to some of my favorite movies from the 80s and 90s. You know, The Lost Boys was a big influence on that episode. Uh, at least the middle of it. You know, when if you're not familiar with it, it's about a bunch of teenage vampires, and like I think their stepdad to be turns out to be a vampire. So, but there's a montage in the middle of that where the kids basically decide to fight back and build all these homemade sort of vampire traps and such. And then of course there's a little bit of Home Alone in there. But then also at the end, it's pure Terminator. You know, like when that race to Troll Market is truly thrilling, and it's just all action set pieces. So it's really got everything in that episode, and I'm impressed that we were able to get it all out. But those are my two favorites that I keep coming back to. Um, okay, let's see who is next. Let's try Cass. Hi, Cass. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. How are
Well,
you?
I'm good. Welcome to the Q&A.
So I had a question about the movie.
Okay. There's only so much I can answer about the movie, so feel free to ask. If I can answer, I will.
Okay, I just had a. Is Zoe gonna be in the movie at all?
That unfortunately is something I'm not allowed to discuss. If it's not been publicly revealed, I just can't. My NDA prevents me from revealing who is or who is not in the film. But I hope you'll watch it and enjoy it.
Okay.
All right. So Mariana, I think you're up. Can you hear me?
You.
Hello. Welcome to
Hi.
this virtual stage. What's your question?
Yes, one of my questions is what do you feel about Troll Jim? I mean, what was the expectations of the character design that you had?
The character of Troll Jim. Well, it's interesting because my expectations were always it's always been Jim. Jim is Jim, and he is throughout the whole show. So I was a little surprised when there was a lot of fan theories that were saying, "Oh, he's different, like he's a different character, or like his soul is been swapped out by somebody else." Because really, that was kind of our intent with that decision that Jim makes is ultimately, at first he thinks, oh, it's my humanity that is what makes me special. But then, you know, as we kind of talked that out, and we realized that just like, saying that only kids that are born a certain way or of a certain race have heroic qualities didn't really feel true or right to us. And we realized, like, what is truly humanity if it's not just the attributes that are inside you, right? So that was kind of our thinking is like, and that was sort of Jim's threshold in that final decision in Troll Hunters was it doesn't matter what you look like, it's about what's inside you. And the reason that Merlin changed him was simply because he had seen a future where he would not survive if he wasn't strong enough for that final battle. Um, and as such, he basically said, I can't make you do this, but, here's the tools that I can give you in order to become, the hero that can survive this battle. And if it weren't for Jim's humanity and his willingness to do what needed to be done, then we probably wouldn't have survived that battle. And in terms of the storyline continuing through Wizards, it's the same message, which is it really does not matter what you look like, and it's continued. In fact, where within Wizards, it's not even the amulet that makes you special, and ultimately that storyline is going to continue on into the film of Jim learning to become on his own terms. That it doesn't matter what you look like. It's not even about the magic stuff that you're given. It's about the personal resilience and strength that's within you. And so that was sort of always the plan. I think we first decided that Jim would maybe sacrifice his humanity, which is the thing that we kind of led people along as being what might make him special. We had decided that pretty early on, and there's hints throughout the series that he kind of is slowly kind of coming to terms with that. When he faces his fear in the deep of losing his humanity, and when Hunter Jim in the Aspectus Stone episode basically says you can't live between two worlds. You're eventually going to have to choose, and if you're going to save the world, you have to give up your human life. And in some ways, he does. So yeah. So that was sort of the broad strokes of what we were thinking about the show, or about that character in the show. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, great. Oops, sorry. If you want to ask me another question, just request again. Sorry, I'm getting used to this. In the meantime, I'm going to go back to Animal Illustrator, I think was next in line. Hey, welcome to the stage. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hi,
Hello.
do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Just trying to stay cool in this crazy Los Angelino heat. So thanks for coming to the Q&A. What was your question?
Yeah, I have two questions.
Okay.
The first is Dixie as a wizard, he can know the future like Merlin?
Mm-hmm.
And the second, how complicated is it to make an episode of Tales of Arcadia?
Okay, so the first question, can Duxie see the future? So the answer is sort of, right? So what we kind of established in Wizards is that much of Merlin's future sight was more or less augmented by this device called the time map, which allows you to see like the direction that fate is pointing, right? But as you change fate, you get to see other possible futures that you can try to guide fate towards. So in theory, the time map also gave Duxie that ability as well. He could see possible futures and he could try to manipulate fate accordingly. Um, and you even see that in, I believe it's episode 3, Witch Hunt of Wizards. You see Duxie has the time map and sees a possible future where everybody gets along and it works out. And, he rather impulsively decides, it's worth a shot. Maybe Merlin doesn't know everything. And then, of course, in manipulating fate, he accidentally nudges it to where Morgana dies. And so, that's the funny thing about the future and manipulating fate with Merlin and Duxie is like nothing is given, nothing is fixed because that the future isn't written yet. But you might see that, like for instance, it's very likely that Merlin had seen a possible future where maybe his future sight suddenly just stopped, and so he knew, and he probably knew that at some point the Arcane Order may return and in search of the seals, and so and knew that the only way to evade that, even if he didn't have all the details, which is kind of another, I think, important aspect to Merlin's future sight. He only catches glimpses of the future or possible futures. So, but our pilot and wizard starts from a place where Merlin clearly had seen a possible future where, in order to evade the arcane order whenever they showed up, he would have to go back to the past of Camelot. So it's this fun kind of like Gordian knot of cause and effect that if you know your own future and you change it, what does that mean? And it's a weird thing that wizards just seem to be able to do sometimes. And so yeah, that's the long answer, I suppose, is that Dukesy with the time map could see possible futures, but I think he's come to realize that that's not necessarily the easiest way to find the best way forward for everyone. So the other question, I believe, was how hard is it to make an episode of Tales of Arcadia? It's pretty hard. We've definitely pushed the boundaries for making television, especially CGI animated television, whenever we could, and Wizards was no exception. So it usually takes about beginning to end, more or less a year. There's about 13 stages between, breaking the episode and then by the time it's actually written and then storyboarded, then cut into animatic in the editing bay with scratch track. Then you record your voice actors. Then you send it overseas and your directors will do like layout and animation, lighting, special effects. It's quite a to-do, but thankfully we have something of a pipeline in place, in no small part to Troll Hunters, so that's been great. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Of course. All right, so next we have Mariana. Hello? Mariana, can you hear me? Hello? Mariana, are you there?
Oh yes, I can hear you. Sorry.
No worries. Hi, welcome to the Q&A. What's your question?
Oh yes. My another question was if there was a possibility of Jim being a changeling.
Was there ever a possibility of it? Yeah, I mean, it was certainly, we discussed all possibilities in Troll Hunters from very early on. And, I think we had talked about maybe Jim was a changeling. We talked about like his dad was maybe a changeling. We had talked about that I think in the original book, all of the teachers and Steve are all changelings. And so we were sort of like we had a lot of long discussions about like that feels like a bit too much of a coincidence of like literally everybody Jim knows is a changeling, but also is he a changeling? What makes him special? And I think relatively early on we had presented some of these possibilities to Guillermo, and he ultimately said, I want Jim to be a normal boy. I do not want him to necessarily just be, the chosen one because he has some special ancestry or something like that. He wanted to be just the neighborhood kid who's a little jittery, but has a good heart, suddenly gets past the mantle of Hercules. He wanted it to be like a very fish out of water kind of thing. And he felt that ultimately that Jim having some magic ancestry, might step on that. As far as anything else that's revealed in the rest of the story, you'll have to find out. Okay. I think next we have Drago Nut. Hello, can you hear me? Drago? Are you there? Hello? Drago Nut. Hello?
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Hello, it's a pleasure to ask you a question. Sorry for my English skills, I'm from Russia. But we here in Russia have a huge community of fans. I just want to say that in our social medias we have just about 3,000 subscribers, and we translated all your interviews from Discord, YouTube videos, and etc. to Russian. So it's great to have the possibility to ask you a question right now.
That's amazing. Хорошо.
Uh, so my question is, how do you feel right now, knowing that the story you've been working on for several years is one of the in once months to end? I mean, I understand the emotions of fans, but what about you? Do you feel satisfied, or maybe you feel that you uh, not made something? I don't know. What do you feel right now?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because you know I feel very I think emotional about the idea of Tales of Arcadia finally coming to its conclusion. You know, it is something that I have always held very dear to my heart. You know, it was I think I had worked in feature films before, and I'd written TV pilots before, but Troll Hunters was my first TV writing job where I was actually like producing television because before that I was making stuff for the web and writing movies and whatnot. So it really was my first chance to be in a TV writer's room way back in like 2013, 2014. Um, and, uh, and, and it was such a wonderful experience. Guillermo called it a special alchemy. It's something that you can't really recreate, but it was so wonderful to be around so many tremendously talented people. And not only to kind of cut my teeth as a storyteller myself and show them what I could do, but also learn so much from them, from like Guillermo and Mark Guggenheim and the Hageman brothers and Rodrigo Blas. It was, and my fellow writers like Ashley A.C. Bradley and Chad Quant and um, uh, it was just this incredible kind of experience that it's harrowing to think that it's gone on as long as it has, but also I'm so glad that it has because I feel like we're finally kind of achieved the fan base as you were alluding to that I felt like the series always deserved, not because I worked on it, but because I loved the show, and I knew that people would find it eventually and like it, and it has been sort of like a slow build over this last uh, you know 7 years or so of people gradually finding it, or maybe they would watch Three Below, and then people would say, "Oh, you got to go back and watch Troll Hunters." And then when Wizards came out, it was a huge success. It was like I think top 10 worldwide for a good 2 or 3 weeks on Netflix. And then people were going back and watching Troll Hunters again from the beginning. So it is very bittersweet to think that this is the sort of capstone that we've been building towards this whole time. But I do take comfort in the fact that this is how we had wanted it to happen from the beginning. I have documents on my computer from like 2016 or something, back when we were first pitching the idea of expanding Tales of Arcadia or Troll Hunters into the full Tales of Arcadia, and this would have been just as we were writing season one, and people were like, "Hey, this is actually pretty good." Uh, um, that and in that document, if I reread it the other day, we pitch and we talk about how it's going to end with the rise of the Titans and a feature film, and it's all there. So this is pretty much how it was always planned to happen. So I take comfort in the fact that we got to tell the story more or less how we wanted to tell it, and it's become what it was meant to be. um, and I hope people enjoy the movie, and I hope that like myself, whenever I think about franchises that have been a part of my life that mean a lot, um, it I always take some condolences and solace, I should say, in knowing that it's always there for me to revisit and rewatch and enjoy again and again, and explore with the community, the wonderful fan community that's built up around this series. So, please say hello to all the fellow Russian fans. That's amazing to hear that you've been translating all of my silly things that I've been typing in these various Discords and on Twitter and stuff. But greetings from America, and thank you so much for watching.
Okay, thanks you so much for answering the question, man. That was great. I mean, am I allowed to ask another question, or I should wait for another turn?
Yeah, if you can quickly ask one more question if you like.
Okay, so another question. Is there a small possibility, just small, that we see some sort of spin-off about Zoe and Doxy? I mean, they could have battled in some sort of historical battles or something through their adventures. Did you ever think about it?
Oh yeah, we definitely thought about it. I think we even pitched a graphic novel series, similar to how there were graphic novels with Three Below and Troll Hunters. And I totally agree that there's plenty of stories that could be told of Duxie's past and over the centuries, the adventures they went on, sort of like Doctor Who-esque in a way. So I would love that. We pitched it. They for some reason didn't think there was an audience for it. But who knows? It may never say never. I would have said the same thing about that Avatar: The Last Airbender is done, and here we are, 10 years later, 20 years later, and they just opened like Avatar Studios, Nickelodeon, to make more Avatar content. So, it's the IP is there. We'll see what the future holds, but for now, the movie is designed to be like sort of the capstone in this particular saga.
Okay, thank you so much. We will wait for it. So, and we'll wait for the movie. Okay,
great.
Thanks.
Okay, let's see. Wait, who? Hello, Mariana. Do you have a question? Hello, Mariana? Are you there? Hello? Hello, Mariana? Oh, I think maybe Mariana her mic might not be working or something. We'll chime in later. Oh, James Faulkner is here. Let's say hello to James Faulkner. James, if you remember. Hello, James. How are you? Can you hear me? Hello? James?
Aaron, hello there.
Hi. Welcome to my sort of impromptu Q&A. For those of you who don't know, James was our wonderful King Arthur on the series and the Green Knight. I've just been doing it. I hit 10,000 followers on Twitter, so I'm doing a little Q&A about the series. How are you, James?
Aaron, I'm very good. I'm sitting here in my house in the south of France, watching Spain play Portugal on the Euros. And then I had a notification that you were online, on air, on a Twitter Q&A session about Wizards Arcadia. So hello to all your listeners. I am indeed the voice of King Arthur and the Green Knight in Aaron's fantastic, well, what can I call it? Organized lunacy.
Yes, that's a fair
Wizards Arcadia. And I want you all to know that I was absolutely delighted to be asked to appear in the show as just as a voice, not as me, because it's never a good idea. And this allows me to stay fresh as a performer, and I'm asked to do things and to be part of a show which seems to me, at first reading, complete lunacy. Then I get it, and then I watch the earlier shows, and then I understand where I am in the progression, in the story, in the saga that is Arcadia. And Aaron, this is the first time we've spoken person to person, man to man, and I could not resist the opportunity.
Well, it's quite wonderful to do so, because I think the first time we spoke was via I think a very shoddy connection in a recording booth somewhere.
Yes.
So
well, actually, not the first. You're quite right. It's not the first time, but you were there with with your writers, I think, and
Yes.
and the other producers on the show, and and I'm in the booth for the first time, so it's always a somewhat nerve-wracking experience that you can hit exactly what your showrunner, what your writer requires of you, and Brooke Chalmers, who was your voice director, who was so great.
Yes.
He said, "I'm so terrified of speaking to Randall Tarley for the first time." He said, "I just feel you're going to roast me." And I said, "There's every chance, Brooke. There's every chance that I will roast you if I get duff direction." But it turned out to be the most enjoyable collaboration, and I want to thank you, Aaron, for including me in your show. I watched the entire show with my family, some of whom are younger than myself, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. And I wish you all the best with all the other things that you undertake. And I just want to remind you that should you pick up the phone to me, I'm available to you, Aaron, and always.
That's wonderful to hear, and it was truly a delight and a privilege to work with you, because that character was a very difficult and tricky character to write. Because we are sort of going against
Sure.
type in many ways, and
Yeah.
and he is sort of being introduced at the 11th hour, and you brought like both a grizzled sort of a hardness to him, but also right whenever the character needed it. There are those little moments where you see where his soul had broken, and those glimmers of pathos and humanity to kind of
Well,
be on that
but you
razor's
wrote
edge.
it. You wrote into. I mean, look, King Arthur has to be. He is an authoritarian figure, but you wrote for him. Those moments of warmth and humanity, and bathos, indeed. Which were there and which were really very easily signaled. And as long as you didn't overdo it as the artist, that you went along with the thrust of the narrative. And for me, it was a joyous collaboration. And to all of you listening, I hope you understand just how much work goes into a show like this. Not just in the technicalities are very difficult for me to understand, because I'm from another generation. But to be included in an entertainment which is really at the cutting edge of animation for DreamWorks, and with Aaron running it, is exciting, and it keeps you fresh, and it makes you want to stay part of the profession. And Aaron, I thank you, and I'll get out of the way. Bless you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this guest spot. I appreciate it. And
Aaron, thank you.
all right, and yes, I will pick up the phone, I'm sure, sooner than
Bless you.
later. So
Yeah.
keep an ear out.
I just had I just had a movie premiere at Seattle at the film festival up there about 7 weeks ago.
That's
A
amazing.
dramedy, a comedy called All Those Small Things, which was written for me, in which I have the leading role, and I play a game show host who's been running an afternoon game show for 40 years. And who's disappointed that he did not follow his dream to play Shakespeare. But it's a charming film, and written for me by Andrew Hyatt, who wrote and directed me in Paul, Apostle of Christ.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Which is another fantastic film, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, everybody check out that film if and when it's available at your local theaters.
Please check it out. I've played 2 cardinals, 1 pope, and now a saint, and now I get to play a broken down TV host.
After
as well as
playing
King Arthur.
Yes, as well as a broken down King Arthur. All right, well, take
what
care,
a magnificent
James.
chest you gave me, and what a beard. Fabulous.
Yes, what a beard and what a chest.
Thank you. I wish you all the very best for the future, and much love to you.
Thank you, and likewise. There you have it, the inimitable James Faulkner, special guest. All right, I'm going to go from the top here, because I think there's a few folks that maybe haven't had a chance to ask a question yet. All right, Marie Guerrero, Weather Girl 2013. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hey, Aaron.
Hi.
Good afternoon to you.
Yes, good afternoon. Wasn't that a delight to have James stop by?
Yep, it truly was.
What's your question?
I actually have 2 questions.
Okay, go ahead.
the first one is about wizards. What happened to Jim in New Jersey? I imagine that it was because of the time constraint of reducing all the, because of the reduction to 10 episodes kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
well,
then,
go ahead.
And then my second question is, how do you end up in the Tale of Arcadia with the writing and all that stuff?
Sure. Yeah. So that's sort of two different questions, but I'll answer as quickly as I can. So the first question was, you were asking about the gym in New Jersey, so you're referring to at the end of Troll Hunters. There's a sort of a cliffhanger ending where Jim and the other trolls have to go off to New Jersey to find the new Heartstone. And we sort of allude to it at the beginning of Wizards, but we don't go into it in much detail. And the reason for that is twofold. One is we wanted to get into the thrust of the story with the Camelot as quickly as possible. And the other reason being that we just didn't have the time or the budget to build a location we were only going to visit once, in the pilot. So ultimately, the canon answer is that Jim and the other trolls did make it to New Jersey, and they found the Heartstone that was there. And the trolls were there starting to construct their new Heartstone troll market there. Jim, and the other, some of his compatriots, like, Claire and Merlin, were out on their troll hunting patrol, as you do, just trying to keep watch, when they were ambushed by the Green Knight, played by James Faulkner. And at first, they didn't realize how outpaced they were until Jim was struck down. And at that point, Merlin swooped in, and realizing that this was a being of pure anti-magic, and sort of scooped up everyone and took them away, led them away from Troll Market, and to the one place that Merlin realized they might have a fighting chance, and that was the Flying Castle of Camelot, which he knew would factor into his scheme to get the Guardians of Arcadia together and powerful enough to face the sort of final battle to come in Rise of the Titans. The other question, I believe, was how did I get into writing for Tales of Arcadia specifically? So interestingly, I had a script that was like what's called a writing sample, just like a script that I had written that had floated over to DreamWorks Animation and had been bouncing around there for a long time. And maybe a year before I was brought in for Troll Hunters, my script was passed along to Rodrigo Blas, who was developing the movie for Troll Hunters at the time, as well as another movie of his called Alma. And he had read my script and really loved it, and was thinking about bringing me on to write Alma for him, when suddenly Troll Hunters got bought by Netflix as a TV series. And so my name was already kind of on the pile, as it were, as well as a number of other really talented folks. And so when the possibility of this movie turned TV series came up, they asked me, would you be interested in working on a show with Guillermo del Toro? And I just quietly had to hold my breath to not shout for joy, because I had seen Pan's Labyrinth and Devil's Backbone and Kronos, and he was truly he's a visionary. So I absolutely was like, yes, anything you need. And the Hageman brothers read my script, and they also really loved it. They responded to it and called me in, and I interviewed with everybody, and that was that. But before that, it was a bit of a long road. I think with anybody trying to break in, you have your false starts, and you have your gigs here or there, and so I had just started breaking into writing feature films for a company called Waterman Entertainment that they did like the Stuart Little films and the Alvin and the Chipmunks films, and I was hired to write an adaptation of The Brave Little Toaster for them. So that was what I was kind of working on at the time when they asked if I wanted to come over and work in TV, which I did because movies can be very hard to make, and sometimes you'll work a very long time on a movie, and then there'll be a regime change, and then it never gets made. So I was excited to actually get stuff made. And it was a total dream, top to bottom, to work on it. So that's how I got into it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my question. Sorry about my English. My
no
first
problem at all.
language is Spanish. My second is English, so sometimes my English comes a little bit broken.
No,
But
I could understand you perfectly.
because I am from New Jersey, so when they were going to Jersey, I'm like, they're coming to my area.
Oh
And
yeah,
then,
the reason for New Jersey specifically was a twofold. Mark Guggenheim is from New Jersey, but my wife is also from New Jersey, and there's an ongoing joke in America that like people who live in New Jersey are they're just the people who couldn't make it in New York or something like that. so there's like
actually,
so that was kind of the originally just a one-off joke of like they landed in New Jersey and they kept moving. It was just like an easy pot shot to take it New Jersey, which my wife was like, "That's not fair. New Jersey's nice." But yeah, so that's why we chose New Jersey specifically, and it slowly kind of became this pivot point in our show.
yeah. Because I live really close to New York City, so when they were like, and then I see the train in Race of the Titans, I'm like, uh-oh, there goes New York City probably again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Right,
Thanks for asking some questions.
Thank you for answering our questions, Aaron, today.
Great. Happy to. Okay, let's try Evok. Can you hear me? Hello?
Oh.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
Hello. Welcome to the
Hi.
Q&A.
Thank you. So I have two questions I hope you can answer.
Sure, I'll try my best.
So the first question is, what was your favorite episode to write and why?
My favorite episode to write. It's funny because my favorite episodes to write are the ones that people always say are cringy. Which
Is it Young Atlas?
Yeah, Young Atlas and
Yes.
and I can't remember what
Hero with 1,000 Faces.
Heroes with 1,000 Faces are the two that were the most fun to write. And I think they were also the most fun for Anton as well, which is maybe why I think about them fondly, because we just got to kind of break Jim out of his comfort zone and have him play like a really crazy version of himself.
Yes.
And it was like there was a few. So I think we tried to push both as far as we could. I think at one point we were like, no, we got to see him like playing the bass guitar, and they were like, we don't have the budget to show him playing it, and we're not going to build a principal's office. And then I was like, okay, well, what if we just heard it over the PA system? And they're like, yeah, we could do that, which I think actually made it funnier.
Yes.
And yeah, and also just like sort of breaking down all the different aspects of Jim's personality and kind of separating them out was a really fun kind of process, because we all contain multitudes, and it was like, okay, there's a part of him that really loves cooking. There's a part of him that is just focused on doing his job, which is Hunter Jim. That's just his responsibility basically manifested. And then there, of course, we got to bring back Crispy Jim, which is basically, Party Jim who has no inhibitions whatsoever. And then I think the only one that didn't make the cut was, I think at one point we had like Baby Jim, like sort of like his inner child, which was, I think everybody just agreed was just like too weird, but it could have been fun. Where he was just, Claire comes into the room and he's just like and he's just like goo goo gaga, like, and she's like, "What? You feel all right, Jim? Food poisoning?" So yeah, like those are probably the two that were the most fun. The one that was most rewarding, gosh, I don't know. I think that they all have their charms. I weirdly really enjoyed writing Kanjigarg, because that while that was like sort of an exposition scene, it was really fun just to suddenly go on this wild ride where Arg is possessed by Kanjigar, and and then suddenly being thrust into the Darklands, with like basically no plan. It was just really kind of like a weird, wild kind of adventure. Um, so and anger management as well. That was a lot of fun to write for a number of reasons. Just because uh, it's we got to kind of try to use the rules that we'd set up against them, um, which that was always fun. And in episode 12, we do the same thing, I think, uh, where we're like, okay, we've set up this rule where the amulet can be stolen, but we've also set up this other rule that when in danger, the amulet will form around Jim and protect him. So we're like, what if we pit those two rules against each other? And the example I had given in the room when we were talking about that was a lot of Isaac Asimov happens if you take two fundamental laws that are programmed into a robot and put them against each other. What happens? And it's like a logic puzzle. And in this case, we decided that in the hierarchy of needs, the protect Jim aspect of the amulet would override the amulet can be stolen part, because ultimately the purpose of the amulet is to protect its bearer and help them. And that's why you got that cool sort of like Superman sequence where it shoots through the air and zips through town to come to him. And that was all Andrew Schmidt's doing. We had written it, but in terms of it actually, I think he literally referenced footage from Superman of it when he breaks the sound barrier of Man of Steel. Just look at those two clips back to back, and you'll see they're almost identical of when Superman breaks the sound barrier in Man of Steel and when the amulet breaks the sound barrier. But just like fun little moments like that are always fun to write, the homages and callbacks and stuff. Cool. Hope that answered your question.
Yes. Okay, and my second question is, are there any other episodes that were scratched out, like the Strickler one you revealed yesterday? And if so, can you share the concepts or ideas you guys had for those deleted episodes?
There weren't, like, I've mentioned a couple of these before. There's not been many that were like straight up thrown out. Many of them were just sort of like revised. I think there's the episode with the blood goblins. Originally, the original premise of it was instead of blood goblins that were after Noam Chomsky, we were saying they were like escapees from the Darklands that were. At first, we were saying they were leprechauns, which that got shot down because they just felt it was too silly, like, but you're like, yeah, but they could be like what leprechauns are based on, and so, but they were like, no, it's just a different culture, and it's not. They didn't want to do it, so leprechauns got scratched, and then it became like a trio of like sort of angry prison hardened evil gnomes, and like I think there was like they got into the Fergulator or something, and then like grew to like human sized or something like that, or they were like 3 feet tall or something. So there's like 3 feet. So there's like larger gnomes running around proportionally, which we thought would be terrifying to look at. And I think that got scrapped. I think the ending of that episode also would have had Noam Chomsky become a giant, which we really wanted, like an episode where for a moment Chomsky goes into the Fergulator and then comes out and he's the size of like a 2-story building and saves the day. But they were like, we can't do that for production reasons. And then eventually we kind of took what was working from that draft and then switched it to the Blood Goblins episode as it stands. There's also an idea for an episode called the Rock Show, which eventually was sort of repurposed for when the Gum Gum hand, was found in the museum geology exhibit. But originally that was like going to be episode 4 or something in very early planning. And it was Toby's going to the rock show, but then it turns out the person running the rock show was a changeling that we called the Crooked Man. And that was that was a sort of like an idea that we liked a lot, but I think ultimately it was decided that it would be more impactful if the first changeling they encountered was somebody that they had something of a relationship with. And that's what I think why it eventually became like Nomura, who would give them like tours and stuff. And I think that one ended originally like they got caught wind that he was a changeling, and they followed the Crooked Man home, and then it turns out that his home had like a secret troll door, like a tiny bridge that he used to like cross over into this secret like changeling hangout. That was going to be like our Mos Eisley cantina for changelings that we called the Salty Crevasse. And what we thought, I think there was this really thrilling ending where they kind of follow him in there, and then and then the Crooked Man's like, I knew you were following me, and then and he's like, well, then why didn't you say anything? And the reason was because he was like, because I was luring you into a trap to your death. And you find out that the Salty Crevasse had like a bunch of like sodium chloride in the air or something that doesn't harm trolls but was toxic to humans. And so then it became like a ticking clock of could they get out of the Salty Crevasse and evade these changelings or whatever in time. That was an early days idea that got tossed. We also talked about trying to do, I think I put this on Twitter, Enrique, as like buddy cops. that was a pitch that everyone loved, but we just couldn't find a place for it. There's also an episode of that would have been fun, I think. There's also an episode of Wizards that I really would have loved to do, but we just didn't have the time for it, which was that they would go back to the Wildwood in present day, the magical forest that they see outside of Camelot. I really wanted them to go back to that and find out that magic Wildwood had been like turned into like a parking garage or something. And then they would meet the ghost of the Lady of the Lake, and she would sort of impart that, in the centuries after Killahead, basically humanity thrived and eventually kind of forgot how to respect magic, and that's how we wound up with the world of Tales of Arcadia as it began, where humans don't even know anything about magic and just kind of treat the earth as their domain. And that was going to be part of why, King Arthur, when he awakens, realizes that even after sacrificing himself on the Battle of Killahead, he realizes his sacrifice was in vain, and that the world is forever out of balance and still broken, and that's why he kind of like succumbed to the darkness of the Green Knight. I would have loved to show that, but we just didn't have the time for it. But I think we instead kept it a little bit more personal, and tried to keep it close to like, Arthur and Morgana's relationship, as complicated and toxic as that was. And yeah, so those are just, as I said, like it's not really necessarily scrapped episodes. A lot of those were just ideas that were floated that I thought would have been cool. The only ones that were written, I think that there was a draft of the Leprechaun episode written, I think, or at least of the evil gnome trio. But then we wound up going back to the drawing board when we realized that after Jim had faced Gunmar himself, facing a trio of angry gnomes felt like a little bit of a step back. So yeah, that answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
Sure. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to get people who have been waiting a while. Gabby, can you hear me? Gabby fangirling? Hello?
Hi, can you
Hi.
hear me?
Yes, I can.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for being part of creating this amazing show that I love with all my heart. I will never thank you enough. And I have two questions.
Okay.
The first would be, what's your favorite Jalaire moment of all of the, of all Tales of Arcadia in general? And also, did you ever cry while writing any episode of Tales for Arcadia or Rise of the Titans? You know, you can tell us something. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a so the first question is what's my favorite Gelaire moment? And I would say my favorite Gelaire moment is probably the when Jim and her and Claire have their dance on the rooftop after the homecoming prom, or the prom rather, the spring fling. Basically, it goes pear shaped, and they don't get to have prom together. And then he's like, "Funny, I don't feel like a loser." And then he reveals that he learned all the lyrics to to Era 2, and they sort of like have a private moment together. I think that's my favorite of all time. I also We also just really liked the scene that we gave them in Wizards, um, where they get to revisit his backyard in medieval Arcadia and have a picnic together. We thought that was sort of like a nice little moment of respite before everybody got heart attacks again. um, as far as scenes that have I ever cried? Yeah, I've teared up a few times watching the animatics or writing. I think the hardest one that I ever wrote that I remember tearing up quite a bit was as I was writing it was Drawl's death. I thought that one was hard because we knew we had been planning for a while that he would make some sort of heroic sacrifice as Jim's bodyguard. That would ultimately leave Jim vulnerable and have to do it sort of by himself. But it was a hard episode to write. It was a hard scene to write, and I had written the first draft of that scene, and that was real sad. But sometimes the best stories do go there and make you sad, so that's all right. Yeah, and as far as the movie, I should make clear, I coordinated uh, with Mark and the Hagemans early on, and I helped kind of brainstorm a little bit on the contents of the movie, but I was making Wizards while the movie was being made, so I didn't have a hand in necessarily the writing of it or anything like that. But there are some things that will make you cry, I think, in the movie. Rest assured. Did that answer your question?
yes, thank you so much, and thank you for the advice. I would definitely have a tissue and some
Yes.
popcorn when I'm ready to watch Rise of the Titans. And thank you so much. An honor.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for asking us a question. All right. I'm just going to keep going, trying to get people who haven't uh, had a chance to talk yet. All right. Let's try Ronan. Ronan Reverie, how are you? Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I'm still got Camelot on the brain. I was wondering if you guys had any more ideas about the rest of the Knights of the Round Table.
Yes. So I think there's an extended scene that we had written that really kind of laid out that all of the knights except for Galahad had fallen in the Battle of Killahead. Like that was sort of humanity's last stand. That was their sort of Helm's Deep, as it were. And it was Galahad kind of took it on himself to tend to the castle, Camelot, wherever it may have been hidden by Merlin. In my opinion, I think the castle was hidden relatively close to where Merlin's tomb was, like maybe past Duxie was given instructions to hide the castle somewhere in Alsace-Lorraine or the Swiss Alps or wherever wherever that was. And but I think that Galahad was there as well, and at some point must have realized that his years in Camelot or nearness to Merlin had extended his life and maybe awakened a little bit of magic and made him immortal, the same way that everyone else who is a wizard seems to have been
I was wondering
similarly blessed. Another joke we had was like maybe he did find the Holy Grail after all and was drinking onion brew from it. But yeah, I think that was meant to be sort of like Steve's arc, such as it were. It's like he is in many ways sort of the last knight now, and he's sort of like has to sort of pick up their legacy and sort of try to defend his friends as best he can. So that was sort of the idea, was that the Knights of Camelot, the age of chivalry ends with.
Aaron?
Okay, sure. All right. Let's keep going. I think Jackie has maybe been waiting for a while. Hello, Jackie. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hi.
Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Did you have a question for us?
Yeah. I actually have two questions.
Okay.
How long were Jim, Claire, and the Trolls actually gone to New Jersey up until Wizards? And out of the trilogy, like Trollers, Through Below, or Wizards, which character did you love creating the most? Like, or most fun, personality-wise, to write?
Sure. So how long did the trek take from California to New Jersey? I think we decided that it would take them at least a month or two, but by the time Wizards starts, I think they'd been there for at least a few weeks. Like they found the Hearthstone and started building it and whatnot. Just very early days. So, and Jim was out on patrol when he got injured by the Green Knight. And it's possible they found like a gyre station at some point. I don't think we need to assume that the Trolls just walked the entire way. So yeah, enough time so that they had the time to start building the New Jersey troll market, I think is the answer. And then, sorry, what was your second question again?
Out of the whole trilogy, like which character did you love creating the most, or was the
Right.
most fun personality-wise to write?
Yeah. I think the three characters I had the most fun writing for were Duxie, just because he's sort of like who I wish I could be, but also never want to be. He's a bit of a train wreck, but also seems to have that sort of like devil may care charm that is probably closest to my personality. But I think he was the most fun to have that sort of like freewheeling, sort of Doctor Who kind of Avante kind of attitude. Blinky, I think, is always fun to write for because it was a chance for me to just trot out all of my $10 words that I could never employ elsewhere with that I had sort of accumulated with my rather vociferous vocabulary. But with Blinky, he never really held back. So that's, I think, the fun part of writing him is that he will use 15 words where 2 will do, and is happy to gild the lily wherever possible. And I very much feel a kinship with that. And yeah, so like those are the two that come to mind I think Steve is also really fun to write for, just because he just has all this unearned confidence, but but even though he means well, he's not a smart man, and so um, and and the episodes that I worked on where we got to dig under the hood a little bit and see like why he has that sort of bravado and finding out he came from sort of a broken home, and actually just deep down just wants to be loved like everybody else. That doesn't mean he has to be like the most charming person in the world, but he is. His character was always kind of fun for me. Eli was also great too, because he was just sort of like, well, my life is terrible, but that's just life. I'm gonna go find out about trolls and be the hero of my own story. Like Eli was quite fun to write for that reason too. Yeah, I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, thanks for answering them.
Sure. All right, let's try Jen. Hello, Jen. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hi, yes, I can hear you.
Hi. Welcome to the Q&A.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say it's a huge honor to get to talk to you. I always loved your work.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
So my question is, so there is an art book for the art of troll hunters. I was wondering, will there be one for wizards, maybe?
I would love that, and for Three Below too, because there was a lot of really amazing work that was done for both. Uh, as far as like, will they do another one that's specifically for, Three Below and Wizards? I don't know. Like I would love there to be like a supplementary Tales of Arcadia book. Maybe with the movie coming out too, they'll just do like a straight up Tales of Arcadia art book that they throw everything in there for it, because they certainly have enough. But I don't know what the protocol is for that, and when they feel like they have it ready to go. I think a lot of those sort of supplementary materials too kind of got put on pause with the pandemic and whatnot. But maybe it's sort of a new day. People are getting vaccinated. Maybe there'll be a market for it. I do know the one for Troll Hunters took a very long time to make. So if they do come out with an art of book, I suspect it may be a little while, but it's not impossible. Especially if the movie does well.
Yeah, and it's all beautiful art, and I'm sure the movie's gonna do amazing. I can't wait for it to come out.
Yeah, I certainly hope so.
Well, thanks very much.
Sure.
It was so great to talk to you and ask my question.
Happy to. Thanks, Sean. All right, I'll just keep going, I guess. Let's try Jeff Ullman. How are you? Can you hear me? Jeff, are you there? Hello? Jeff?
Hello, sorry, Aaron. How
Hi.
are you?
Hi, hello. You're here.
Hey, I'm an animator and a screenwriter up here in Toronto,
Oh,
and
cool.
I was lucky enough to animate on season 1, actually.
Oh, that's amazing. I thought your name looked familiar, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. I animated the delivery guy at the beginning of Waka Chaka.
That's amazing. That was my that was my episode.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, no. What I was going to say is the whole crew, we were so blown away by the writing, and it really energized us to give it our best, because we knew it was something special right off the bat. So I wanted to ask you, I've been doing a lot of writing, and so I'm curious about the writer's room and what the setup was, and how you get a bunch of people writing along the spine of a season, and how that all worked for you guys.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So yeah, our writer's room, relatively speaking, was small. We kind of organized ourselves sort of like how a live action room will be organized, but a live action room could have anywhere from 10 to 20 writers, which is crazy to think, because in animation, the budgets tend to be a lot more compact, and everybody's wearing multiple hats and whatnot. So so basically, we had, obviously, Guillermo is there at the top, and he sort of gave us the green light on ideas to pursue, and he would come in, every few weeks or so, or months, and just give us guidance. We would show him animatics, pitch him story arcs and stuff, and so he was and he would basically say, "Oh, that's great. If you do that, you should do this," and then he would obviously come in for the animatics and give notes and whatnot. But Guillermo was sort of like our sort of grand mafia don at the top, who also sort of gave us the green light to be as creative as we liked, which is very nice to have, because sometimes you never know, when you have somebody as big as a name as Guillermo, they could be very sort of top down, just saying you just have to do it my way, or sometimes they would be like, they'll just be like, I'm just going to take a huge chunk of the budget and then, call me when it's on the air, But with Guillermo was neither of that. He was very much, he was a fan of the show as anything else. I'll never forget. I think we had been working. He came in a couple times just for very early sort of story pitches and like pitching out the season. But I remember he had seen the pilot, and that's the pilot had been boarded when when the room opened, and so I had to look at the pilot and read the script, and that's pretty much as much as they had, besides just like some very loose ideas for what type of episodes could be done. And I remember we had worked for a few weeks, and then we had eventually we had animatics, after the first couple months, for I think at various stages for the first, I think, 6 episodes, maybe 7. And I remember Guillermo came in because he had been working on, I believe, Crimson Peak at the time. So he kind of like disappeared for like a couple months as we were working off his directive, and he came back, and he saw episode 3 and turned, and it was just like, keep going. And then so then we got to episode 4, and then he was just like, ooh, keep going. And then he literally, I think by the time he got to episode 5, he called his assistant and said, cancel my flights. I'm putting on coffee, and I just want to binge watch this show. And proceeded to spend the next 5 or 6 hours just watching everything we had done, and just kept like turning back and looking at us with astonishment. And he was just like, we thought you'd be good, but you didn't tell us you'd be this good. And it was like such an amazing experience to hear from somebody who, I had sort of worshipped from afar for as long as I could be a filmmaker, because I saw Devil's Backbone and Pan's Labyrinth and all that. And just to have him basically say, like, I love this series. I love that and obviously we had done some dirty tricks and putting cliffhangers at the end of every episode, right? So the fact that it was working on a master storyteller was like, hey, I guess we pulled it off. But in terms of the actual structure of the writer's room itself, Guillermo's at the top, and then we had Mark Guggenheim, who was sort of like a non-writing EP, but he would give us notes because he was off busy working on the Arrowverse. I think he was still an executive producer and showrunner of Arrow at the time. And then we had the Hageman brothers, who had been brought in to be the head writers and co-executive producers and co-showrunners. So they were sort of like the head writers, as it were, for Trollhunters. And then there was myself, and my writing partner at the time, Chad Quant. And then there was AC Bradley, Ashley, who is now show running What If for Marvel. And that was pretty much it. It was just the 3 of us. It was like a writing team of the Hageman brothers, writing team of myself and Chad, and then Ashley, and then that was just the 3 of us. We're like, all right, make show now. And so we were like, okay. But I came from movies, right? So I didn't know any different. So like I was like, all right, let's just start writing episodes and taking big swings. So I would say the first few weeks were sort of started from a place of, all right, let's figure out what the season is. You know, we had a movie script that from when the show was being developed as a movie. But as you can imagine, like trying to tell the story of Troll Hunters in an hour and a half is a much different sort of prospect than telling it over, you know, now what, 80 plus episodes of television. It's just a different beast. So that was just sort of like, use it if you want, but don't be beholden to any of it, was really the kind of the attitude. Same with the book, actually. Actually, some of the executives explicitly told us not to read the book because it was so dark and gruesome. But there was a few elements that we knew were involved. Like, for instance, Jim has an amulet. It's a magic amulet that protects him. There is a bridge called Killahead Bridge that if you open it, Gunmar will come out and he will try to dominate the earth. Like, there's like very basic stuff that kind of was our guiding light. And then beyond that, it was like, okay, well, let's think about it. Like, why was Jim chosen? What if it seems like it was an accident? Okay, we can work with that. That's like a fish out of water sort of story. And so we kind of leaned into that. And so the three of us, the two teams and Ashley, we all just kind of put our heads together and said, well, what's the sort of stuff that we want to evoke? And we all agreed, like, this is 100% like an 80s movie, right? Like, everything in here is that sort of fantastic realism meets teenage stupidity kind of thing, right? Which is the bread and butter of so much of 80s sort of fantasy cinema and sci-fi. So we were like, okay, that's an easy tone, like that sort of Amblin kind of silliness, where you can have like really intense discussions about divorce, and then you could also have a kid run up and say, "You kicked the Wolfman and the Nards," like, you know, like so like once we had figured out the tone and the characters, and then we would spend a few weeks building out the world, and usually we'd break it down into, you know, we balance an equal balance of just like episode pitches of just like, oh, you know, what if Jim shrinks, you know, like that sort of thing, or what if his amulet malfunctions, but then balancing that with the season arcs. Usually we would break it down into 13 episode seasons, more or less. That was the way we kind of wrapped our heads around it. And so within the season, we figured out the beginning, the midpoint, the ending, and then we talk about the character arcs for each character, like where are they emotionally, how are they tracking as a team, what's Jim, our protagonist's like ultimate lesson for this season, you know, what, and then we would start slotting in those silly one-off episode ideas to see where they might fit into that sort of general's arc. It's like, oh, you know, this might actually work here, like the Jim in Jim Gets a Grit Shaka episode might actually slot into the idea of Jim realizing there's no shortcuts to heroism. And you know, the purpose of being afraid, for instance, like what if you take that away and show why just being a reckless, foolhardy hero isn't necessarily the best way to be a good hero. And we had like the 3 rules of troll hunting, which we got to kind of showcase. You know, always finish the fight. You know, always be afraid. When in doubt, kick them in the gronknucks. Like the always finish the fight. We wanted to challenge each one of those rules, and that became sort of like fundamental. You know, the gnome episode was, what if Jim didn't finish the fight? What if he did it his own way? You know, and always be afraid. What if Jim wasn't afraid? That was the Grit Shaka episode. And then the gronknucks thing, which we were like, well, metaphorically, it's like, do you always is it always best to just go for an enemy's weakness? Like, is there a different way to resolve a conflict? And that was the drawl episode in episode 6, right? Where instead of finishing the fight or going for his weakness, he saves him and then finds a different path. And that became sort of our guiding light of like, how does Jim kind of reinvent both human and troll worlds on his own? Then once we kind of got the season more or less approved, then we would just off to script, and we would trade off. Like, we'd come in, help each other with breaking of the episodes, and then we'd go off for like a week and write the episode, come back, rinse, repeat, and you know, and whenever there was a spot where we needed to catch up, we would all just do like a Frankenstein draft. Like we would all split up an episode and just take a third of it, you know, and that was a way that we could kind of stay on track. And that's pretty much how we've always done it, or at least the rooms that I've run since then, Wizards and even Star Trek. That seems to work for us. Oh, and then before a script goes out, we would always do a table read with just the writers, where everybody got to read the script in advance. And then we would sit down and just like line by line or scene by scene, we would read the script, assign characters and everything, and just perform it. And then we would pause at the end of each scene or stopping point and just say, okay, did anybody have any thoughts? Any reactions? And sometimes it'd be like, oh, that line was a little clunky, saying it out loud, maybe we can simplify it. Oh, that line sounded a little adult. Can we make it sound more teenagery? Sometimes it was bigger issues, like I bumped on this moment because I know it wasn't intentional, but it seems like a logic problem. And then we would stop and kind of rework that moment to make it flow better. And, that process, while grueling, usually meant that by the time the script went out, everybody kind of at least had a chance to say their piece, And so even with rewrites and everything, everybody was pretty happy with it, and it made for really strong first drafts, which actually helped us in the long run when you're doing something as complex as this show, because you don't want to be getting notes that are like fundamental story issues that when you're 3 episodes down the line. But it's just an easy way to keep everybody on the same page. So that's pretty much our process.
Wow, that's so great. Thank you so much. It's really thorough, and it's like looking behind the curtain. So I really appreciate you breaking it down like that.
Absolutely, and good work on animating the mailman. I love that guy. With
so much
with Tom Kenny just going wow 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 or whatever it is, he's flipping the mail around.
Yeah,
it's pretty
sure.
fun.
And I got to animate the creatures as well. It was such a blast.
Oh yeah, so
definitely a high point in my career.
So were you at ARC? Was that who animated that episode?
I was at ARC.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah, I was working with Mike Chafe.
Oh yeah, brilliant guy.
Yeah. And so I did that, and I had a few shots of Strickler and Jim in the classroom, like picking up his books and having sort of a heart-to-heart. So there was such a good range of scenes, like really silly actiony stuff and really heartfelt stuff. So it was such a pleasure to work on.
Well, thanks for being a part of it. I feel like this show is as good as it is because of you as anyone else. So thanks for your hard work.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Great talking to you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm just going to keep going. How about Duna Supremacy, Uni Muna? Can you hear me? Hello? Oh, did we lose Uni?
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Hello. How are you?
Hello. I have two questions. But first, okay. I want to thank you for helping with this amazing show that has been helping me through a lot of things in my life, and I'm very grateful for this show.
Well, thanks for watching. That's very nice to hear. And honestly, that's why we made it, was so that people could enjoy it as much as we did telling the story, and hopefully bring some comfort and solace, as all stories do. So I'm glad to hear that it did for you.
Okay, so my first question is, how do you think it would be if instead of Dictatious, Blinky went to the Darklands?
Oh gosh, it's hard to say, because it's funny because as you saw in Wizards, Blinky and Dictatious both changed quite a bit, in the 900 years or so between when they last saw each other. So Blinky, I feel like maybe his cowardly sort of attitudes might have reverted back. I think maybe he would have. I don't know if he would have gone full Gunmar, because I think he was a little afraid of him, but maybe he would have been sort of strong-armed into it, just to survive. Or maybe he would just become like that weird monkey lizard thing from Star Wars, Salacious Crumb, where he would just go in the Rancor pit. Maybe that's what would become of Blinky. He just is like a court jester that gets trotted out. It's what a dark Elseworlds that would be. And so, but yeah, I don't know if Blinky would have gone as dark as Dictatious did. But I don't know if he would have thrived in the Darklands either. And then as far as how Dictatious would have done on the outside, maybe he would have wound up a little bit more like Blinky. I don't know. Maybe slightly more haughty, whereas Blinky, I think, had a certain humility. Maybe Dictatious would be a little bit more of a know-it-all, I suppose. But that would be my guess as far as like how they would react.
Huh, interesting. And now for my second and last question. Who's your favorite villain?
Ooh, gosh, it's an interesting question. But it's also like it has a lot of sort of components to it, because a lot of the quote unquote villains in Tales of Arcadia, we try to go out of our way to show that they have more going on under the hood than just being, I want to scenery chew and destroy the world. They all have sort of a point of view, and many of them, redeem themselves, Steven Universe style. I think the ones that I always gravitated towards were the ones that were slightly more conflicted, I suppose, but maybe at some point sort of, relished their darker impulses. So, I am a fan of like Strickler, Nomura, Angarot, Morgana, and I think we actually did some really cool stuff with Arthur as well, and the Green Knight. So those are probably my favorites. That just in terms of like kind of getting underneath their skin and really trying to understand who they were as characters. But they're all great, and they all are special for different reasons. Even what's his name? Oh my God, Otto Skarbach. I feel like was fun to write at the very least, because he was just sort of so insidiously evil. So yeah, like those. I guess that's my answer. I like most all of them. Gunmar was probably the hardest to write for, because he was like a sort of troll warlord, and it was hard. It would have been hard to redeem him, but at least we gave him a point of view in so far as trolls were being vying for survival on the surface with humanity, and he just decided that trolls would win that fight. So yeah, that's my answer. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, it does. It sure does. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. All right, let's keep going. Geo, Fantastic Four, how are you? Can you hear me? Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to the Q&A.
Thank you for accepting me. My question is, if you like how characters that you've written before, like Steve, were written in Three Below, or if you would change anything.
As far as like how I guess you're asking, how did I feel about how characters were treated in Three Below? I thought they were the Three Below team did a pretty bang up job on what I thought was a pretty difficult task, which was you have to suddenly introduce a new world and a new protagonist and a new set of characters, but in the same auspices as a show that's already existed, which is extremely difficult to do. And I thought they actually did a pretty solid job with it. As far as legacy characters, I think I think Steve, they developed him quite a bit in Three Below, which I thought was an interesting move. Same with Eli, I think if I had one thing that one way or the other, I would have loved like a little more Toby involvement in the back half, but that's just a personal preference more than anything. So I don't know if I would change it per se, other than maybe just because I like Toby a lot, I would have liked a little more from him, in that last bit. But I'm sure people feel the same way about Wizards, because we were trying to showcase the Wizards stories, and so that it wasn't a sequel to Three Below. So and we wanted to save the reunion of all of the Three Below characters for the movie. So I'm sure that I know there's a number of people big fight in Rise of the Titans, because that would have been us repeating ourselves. So we chose to focus more on the Wizard story, setting up the movie where everybody would return. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you so much.
Sure. All right. I'm just going to keep going. Delos, Miptonism. Can you hear me? Hi, we can hear you. Okay.
Honor to talk to you. Second, recently I've been through a very dark place, and Tales of Arcadia is what has me going through right now. So I wanted to thank you from all the people that work. You are someone I can thank. And then I have a petition that a friend asked if you could say, Linda, ¿dónde está la zapatería?
¿Dónde está la zapatería? That one?
Yeah.
Yes, that's that was so. This, I don't know if you know the story behind that. So that, like, when Spanish Jim in that episode says "Donde está la zapatería," it was supposed to be sort of a harkening back to in second language classes, in Spanish classes, in American classrooms. One of the first phrases you learn, besides like "Hi, my name is" and whatnot, is weirdly there's this phrase that's like, "Where is the discotheque?" or "Where is the shoe store?" And so the idea is that Spanish Jim only has like the Spanish 101 phrases that he learned. So, and one of them happens to be "Donde está la zapatería," which means where is the shoe store.
Of course. Well, for me it was very interesting because I did not only watch the series as a fan, but I also tried to watch it. I watched it several times. And I also like to watch it as a teacher's perspective, as I am a teacher, and to sorry, those are my grandparents on the back.
Totally fine.
So it's very interesting to see the adults in the situation. And my question is, I am an other and complete fan of relationships where the friendship is so deep that you can differentiate the friendship from. But I have a question of, where did you want to go? I mean, like with Blinky and Ark, like the relationship is so pure and deep, and I would like to hear more about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because they were sort of created as sort of like our Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, just sort of like, they can't do the hero work, but they're there to kind of assist our Hamlet of Jim. But as we wrote the series, we realized that they've probably been together for a very long time, and it's sort of like their relationship kind of defies, I think, traditional kind of understandings of friendship or what have you. But I think they are just sort of they're just are together, and like they're sort of life mates, as it were. And And
Yeah.
I've always kind of loved people that just kind of found their person, whether it's romantic or aromantic or what have you. Like those types of people. Like it's in some ways a reflection of sort of like Jim and Toby. Like they're just two of a kind that always were there for each other.
Yes.
Well,
that's why I wanted to hear it from you, because I love them as a ship, like we call it, but I have that same relationship with friends of mine. And it was interesting for me to think what is going on. Is it like I have with my friends, or is it something else? Like you see that they feel so deep about each other. So
yeah, and that's definitely what we wanted to go for. It was just somebody that was very a relationship that was very much like people that are their bond is something you never really question in the series, and and that's
yeah.
something that I think was important for us. Is like it's okay for people to be close to one another, and it's okay for people to have emotions and have emotional connections with, and it doesn't really matter who they are. So that was very much our thinking in that regard.
Well, thank you,
Sure.
you, Aaron.
Okay, so I guess I'll just keep going. Nikki, hello. Can you hear me? Nikki, are you there? Nikki Bogwater? Did we lose you? Oh dear.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry.
Oh yes.
I've
Hi.
been having tech trouble all day. All right. I know you've already heard this a lot, but thank you again for doing this. Thank you for all the time that you put into the fandom as a whole. It's just been a lot of fun to, to be able to listen to your shenanigans on Discord and the way you hang out with all of us. So thanks a lot for that. That's been a really fun experience. My question was, writing is very much a process. You go through it in stages. So I was wondering, which of those stages do you find the easiest or the most fun? So there's like the development of the ideas, the outlining, the drafting, etc. Which stage do you have the most fun with?
I think I have the most fun when I'm like halfway through a draft that I know where I'm going. Like that's probably the most fun for me, because then I can just sort of like focus on just getting a scene right, and I don't have to worry about getting approval on on the outline, or should this character have a bigger role or this or that. Because like the breaking of the story is fun to a certain degree, but it very much is like just you're building a blueprint. And so like I guess when you're just sort of like riffing, that's also really fun. That for me, because that is just sort of like blue sky territory, no wrong answers. But there's an old phrase, I can't remember who said it, that all writers hate the act of writing and they hate the act of not writing. And so the only acceptable state is having just written is the only way that a writer can truly be happy, which is true to a certain degree. But I also just love talking about stories and talking about characters. So I think maybe the most fun in my mind is perhaps when we already have something to build off of, but we're just like okay, what's the story really about, and digging into the theme. Or if I've gotten through the hard part of having written most of my episode, and now I just have like maybe one or two scenes to go, but I know I have a couple days to finish it, so I can just enjoy writing one scene really well. I think that's kind of maybe my happy place.
All right, thank you so much.
Sure. All right, let's see. I'll just try PB, Pabaroom, or Pabaroom 16. Can you hear me? Hello? Hi.
Well, I would like to know. Thank you very much for having me here. I have two questions. The first one is what two characters from Tales of Arcadia would you like to see interact on to see interact more between them? And the second one um, is um, and the second one is which character that's death, it could be a hero or a villain, would you like to bring back again?
Gosh, that's a great question. You know, in terms of like pair ups, we've done so many, and there's so many that are coming in the movie. People that we haven't interacted necessarily before. But you know, I think I always love when like the minor characters kind of get thrown in together. So I feel like, you know, if you had like Not Enrique and Archie in the same room, I think they would have quite an interesting conversation. And I feel like by the end of it, they might have like their own poker game or be like running some sort of underground casino together or something. Um, you know, I always love Barbara. She's just like a great character too. I'd love to see her kind of interact with some of these other characters that she hadn't necessarily outside of Troll Hunters. Um, and yeah, I mean, like I love them all, and they all kind of just live in my head, I guess. So I can kind of make them talk with, to each other whenever I want to. But you know, I think those weird little pairings I think are my favorite. And then, sorry, what was your second question?
Which hero or villain from from Tales of Arcadia that died before would you like to bring back to?
That's right. You know, I feel like pretty much all the characters that have died usually died for a reason. You know, whether they had kind of given all that they could, you know, or they had learned a lesson too late, like Merlin, sort of like a tragic figure in the Aristotelian sense. You know, if I had my druthers, I would have loved for Droll to have survived at least long enough to have one last hurrah with Nomura in the final battle. I think that I would have loved to have seen that, but unfortunately, we just didn't have the time or the real estate in the story for it. And it also wasn't really my call. So I think that all told, I think that we did a pretty decent job with him, and I've seen so many people sad that Droll is gone, and I'm like, I agree, I'm sad he's gone too, but that's sometimes that is the purpose of a story, is to make you feel, you know, catharsis, to feel those moments of pain and regret, and what could have been. But also have come through that emotion and feel better at the other side of it. So, you know, I would love everybody just to be back. I love all the characters, just to kind of hang out. But there's not any particular character that I would love to bring back to life again, because you know I don't want to necessarily just cheapen their sacrifices and such. But yeah, maybe if Droll had lived to the Battle of Killahead, I would have been a little happier. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. All right. Let's do. I think Zerm Germs has been asking for a little while, so we'll do that. Hello, Zerm Germs. How are you? Can you hear me?
Hi. Hello.
Hi. Welcome to the Q&A.
Hi. Glad to be here. I think I have a couple of questions. I
Sure.
think you mentioned before that you like to put in a lot of 80s references.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, like, what were your favorite 80s references to put in?
Gosh, I mean, what the most obvious one is Monster Squad, where they defeat the Wolfman by kicking him in the nards. So that's that would be rule number 3. There's also a lot of the references were kind of like more like really intense like troll lore. That was a reference to Ghostbusters when Louis Tully gets possessed by the gatekeeper and starts going on and on about there are many Slore beasts in the 5th letter of Slore, like that. So that was definitely an homage to that. There's also a lot of like little specific moments that are kind of references, like I think the 3rd act of the pilot for Wizards was very much inspired by like Army of Darkness and Time Bandits, where they kind of like fall through a portal into the medieval times. I think the end of Anger Management, when the car is driving just like in a straight brick wall, and they're like, we just gotta trust, it's gonna happen, and then right at the last minute they fly through. That was actually like a weird deep cut reference to Back to the Future Part 3, when he's driving at just like a painting of like an Old West thing, and then just before he crashes into the concrete wall, he suddenly flashes back and he's now in the Old West. Yeah, I think I mentioned also that episode had like an homage to the Lost Boys, and I think the Merlin's Tomb sequence is sort of an homage to Goonies, and also I think Legend of Zelda puzzles, like the original Legend of Zelda. Yeah, all kinds of like I could go on, and many of them I forget that I did them until I'm watching the episode. It's like, oh yeah, that's totally a reference to Terminator. But yeah, that's I think at one point Dukesy says like what does he say? Well, he says like we're here to barter. That's an homage to I'm here to bargain from Doctor Strange. There's all we love doing all that. It's really fun for us, and the reason there's a reason those lines are iconic, because they serve a great purpose in the story usually. So yeah, it's fun, just like anytime you think you might like, was that a Jurassic Park reference? It's like, yeah, it almost certainly was.
Very nice. I also wanted to ask, I'm not sure if you already answered this, but I've always wondered the writing process for further episodes and further seasons. I've always wondered if whether those were already detailed out or if they're a rough draft, and as you move through further through the seasons, you go into more detail.
Yeah, it's a balance, right? Because on the one hand, you do want to know where you're going with your story, and so you do create like sort of a backbone, a blueprint, as it were, that will carry you through. Like, okay, if we follow this idea that eventually Gunmar is going to get out and Jim's going to have to face him down, right? That's where you're building to eventually. Then you can start kind of like, you have at least a loose skeleton, then you can start fleshing it out. But as stories evolve as you tell them, right? And so sometimes there'll be like a story beat that you're like, you convinced yourself as you were breaking all this out, months ago, that would be the end of your series, and then you're actually like, it feels like this beat here should actually happen now, and so you learn to kind of evolve with it, like, okay, it feels like we're dragging it out if it takes this long for Jim to learn this lesson, or it seems like we're just kind of like spinning our wheels. Let's just advance the story and see where it takes us, So some things were kind of planned out from the beginning. Some things, like I think the idea of doing a full Tales of Arcadia trilogy, that didn't fully come into focus until we were like midway through. I think we had written maybe 13 or 14 episodes of Troll Hunters, and then there was a lot of real talk of like, like this world and this story is so much bigger than any of us really anticipated. It and as we started to write towards that, that's when we started to say, like, I think day one we had said, he's evoking the name of Merlin right there on the amulet. I feel like we're going to have to meet him eventually, right? But that slowly kind of evolved, like, organically, of like, oh yeah, like that's the last season. It's like he finds Merlin, and and in my mind, at least from the beginning, I was like, well, if we're gonna meet Merlin, we definitely got to meet Morgana. And so like there are elements that we kind of invented as we were getting into the nuts and bolts of the storytelling that very organically kind of found their place, and like, oh, this is a great place to hint that. And so you have all your painter's palette, or your threads, as it were, to make this masterfully woven blanket, but you never want to force it. So how does it advance your character's story arc? Mark. You have to stay flexible perfectly in a week. You're just not. You're going to come up with better ideas as you're actually writing it and living with these characters. So you have to just. It's a little bit like peering at the multiverse in a way. Like anytime you write an episode or structure a season, you have to keep in the back of your head like 15 other versions of the season, and at any one time be willing to shift, like, oh, actually this version of the season works better, let's write towards that, so it's this dance you do with yourself, and you have to give yourself enough of a vision that everybody knows the fundamentals, but also has room to bring their own creativity as well. Because that's the other thing too, as a showrunner especially, you don't want to just be in a place where you've just dictated everything and they're just hands, that are just doing stuff. You want to give them a chance to showcase their abilities too, if you can, which sometimes can be hard on a serialized show, I will admit. But ideally, everybody will kind of like pitch in together, and inevitably you'll come up with something together that you never would have done when you're by yourself, just sending development stuff to an executive.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question. I know I was being a little vague, but it really is sort of like a balance of like, give yourself, like, do the work to at least know where your story is going, figure out the midpoint of your season, if it's a serialized story, and your finale of your season, and then have an idea of where it would go to season 2, and then maybe where the series lesson, what that would be, and then just start slowly kind of telling it one episode at a time. It's like, okay, when is the episode he finds out about changelings? What impact does that have? Because especially in serialized stories, it's always about cause and effect. It's always like, okay, he learns about changelings, but changelings, it might be his teacher. Find a gaggle tack to try to suss out who is a changeling and who's not. Like, so it evolves as you tell it, is the short answer.
Yes, that's really nice. I love that. As you mentioned, throughout the whole seasons, we have trolls, and there's lots of creatures there. We have trolls, we have changelings, wizards, we have familiars, witches and wizards, and in aliens we have, of course, aliens and all kinds of fancy machine work. I was wondering if there were any other like creatures that y'all wanted to introduce to the show, any other like mythological creatures or any of the sort to bring to the show.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We always, in my mind, the Tales of Arcadia universe, every cryptid you ever heard of either exists or it was a case of mistaken identity, right? And they kind of implied that a little bit, I think, in there is a campfire episode in Three Below, which was originally pitched in Troll Hunters, which was that there'd be like a local Bigfoot, and you'd find out it was actually just like a troll or something that had been banished from Troll Market, and it wasn't very good at hiding himself. But wherever we could, we tried to like drop hints that this world was bigger and bigger and bigger. I think Blinky offhandedly mentions like a huldra fish, which is some sort of like troll fish from Norwegian lore, and yes, there are other creatures out there, and dragons, I think, were something that for a while was off limits for obvious reasons, because they had a whole franchise that was dedicated to dragons.
Course.
But at a certain point, we were like, we're literally going to Arthurian times. Like, come on. But even then, we did sort of like our own take on a dragon, with Archie's father or what have you, Charlemagne. So, yeah, I mean, that's the short answers. We had all kinds of fun, like cool ideas, But it's funny because every time we invent one and we couldn't make it work, it wound up finding its way into something else, like the spider creature that eventually became Buster on Three Below was originally pitched as a random creature that they had to fight in Merlin's tomb. That was like the guardian of the tomb. So it's yeah. I mean, I love cryptids. I would put every single cryptid imaginable in the show if I could. If the show kind of went on forever, I'm sure we'd eventually encounter some spin on vampires or something. I'm sure there's a million others, but I always love finding those really weird ones, like the Mothman. I don't know if you're familiar with the Mothman cryptid.
Yeah.
Where he's like a radioactive moth that can predict the future. I'm like, oh, love that. Inject that into my veins, please. So yeah, no, there's in my mind, there's a way to work in just about any sort of mythological creature you like into this world that all kind of coexist in this sort of melting pot of weirdness and fantasy.
That's so great. That's so awesome. I think that's all I have for today. Thank you so much, Aaron, for hosting this, and thank you so much for hearing me out.
Sure. Thanks for asking some questions. All right, I'm gonna just keep trucking along. I'm gonna try to get to as many people as possible. Oh, I just okay. Cass, hello.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. I have two very important questions about Three Below.
Okay.
Well, one's about Three Below, one's about Troll Hunters.
All right. I didn't work on Three Below, but I might be able to answer it.
Yeah, so in Three Below, when they were taking Galen's core back to Earth for Kanjigar to guard,
yeah,
Aja's mother said something about it returning to the place from which it came.
Mm-hmm.
So, did Galen's core really come from Earth? Is there a story behind that?
Yes, that's about all I can say about that. I mean, yes, the answer is yes. As you might be able to tell from the movies, obviously there are titans afoot, and there is a reason that Arcadia has so much weird stuff going on, and I think that's about as much as I can really say.
Okay, and my second question was, when Jim was in the deep, in the deep, they fight their worst fears to the death, right?
Yes.
So I'm just curious what Jim's fear was specifically.
So in that regard, yeah, like his fear was losing his humanity, and that was sort of coming off of, as I mentioned before, I think in the episode here with 1,000 Faces, you catch another glimpse of it. You've gotten lucky that you've been able to balance the human and the world and the magical world, but at a certain point, you will have to give up your human life in order to protect those you care about. And so that was sort of like, that's what the Hunter Jin tells to him, who is, of course, a part of Jim. And that is the sort of manifestation of that fear, was like, if he gives up his humanity, then what's left? And he thought, and in his mind, he would become a monster, right? And then, as we see later in the season, or the next season, I should say, when he does arrive at that choice, we realize, oh, humanity is what's inside you. It doesn't matter what you look like. It'll always be you. So that was sort of the idea.
Well, thank you so much for answering my questions.
Sure. Hello, Imber. How are you? Can you hear me? Hello, Imber.
Oh, hi. Sorry.
Hi.
Mic muted.
No worries.
Oh my goodness. All right. I have 2 questions. During the past part of Wizards, how old was Morgana and Arthur? Like, what? Because Dukesie's like forever 19, right? What age is Morgana forever at?
Right. We try not to specify that stuff too much, but I like to think that maybe that her powers fully manifested and kind of locked her in, as a young adult. Maybe like just looking at her, I would say she's probably like early 20s, maybe mid to late 20s. Hard to say. So she's still sort of like, a fiery young spirit, at least at heart, when we meet her in Wizards. But I think she is sort of an older sister to Dukesy in many ways, functionally. My sister just kind of did her own thing and had her own drama. And I was just kind of like the weird little alien that was running around in the background and that she didn't totally understand, and she mostly ignored. So that was sort of that. So she is sort of an older than Dukesy sort of scenario. Were you wondering about Merlin too? Was that your question?
It was mostly Morgana and Arthur, but yeah,
Arthur.
Merlin too.
Yeah, so Arthur, I think Arthur just continued to age, obviously, even though he was also the older brother, because he kind of stays away from magic. So I think maybe something we kind of implied was that the people in Camelot, just because the world is so suffused with magic, might be a little longer lived anyway, but not immortal unless they sort of embrace their wizardry side. So Merlin, Arthur, I think has been. He aged, and you can kind of see he looks pretty barrel-chested and big, like he could be like in his maybe 30s or 40s or 50s or something. But perhaps I think that maybe he's been around a while. It's been a little bit since Guinevere died. So that's that. Yeah, I mean that's my answer. I don't have a specific age for when they both got locked in, but I think that Merlin, I think because he had no real tutors, that's why he looks old. But also he's just very, very old. But I think he kind of figured it out on his own, and perhaps had an early encounter with the Arcane Order when he was a very young man, and that's perhaps where he started to kind of learn lessons about magic. Sort of like Prometheus stealing fire. In my headcanon, he is Prometheus, and he's the one who learned how to do magic from studying the Arcane Order and then fleeing when he found out that they, are willing to do whatever it takes to maintain the balance. And it was a little bit too Hammurabi's code for Merlin, and he felt like there was a better way if he could control fate himself, and that's where that sort of obsession with fate magic and manipulating people's fates came from. At least that's my headcanon.
That feels super ironic for Merlin to be the one who's like, oh, they're willing to do anything for what they want, and then for him to be the way that he is,
Exactly. Yeah. That was, and that's fully intentional. Is like he was so obsessed on doing it not the Arcane Order's way that he accidentally became the very thing that he hated, and that's what Dukesy kind of helps him see, perhaps a little bit too late. but that's the idea behind his character.
That's so cool. I want to punch Merlin in the face, but as a character, I think he's very interesting.
Well, it's funny because we specifically wrote him to be like, because you expect Merlin to sweep in and he's going to be kooky and fun and will solve all your problems and become like Gandalf. And we were like, we don't want to do that. We don't want to make it easy for our hero. We need to make Merlin like not necessarily a reliable or likable guy. He's just a guy with an agenda. And then it becomes more on Jim to make that decision, however manipulative Merlin might have been in trying to get what he perceived as the only way that success could be had. So that was sort of the thinking behind that anyway. All right, well, I hope that answered your question.
It did. My other question was, how long has Dukesy been in Arcadia exactly?
That's a good question. I think he's probably been there for at least, I don't know. In my mind, I'd say he's probably been there for 10, 12 years, something like that. Kind of maybe like just scouting the area, because I think Merlin's instructions to him were pretty vague. They just said like, when the time is right, go to the Heartstone in Arcadia and await my instructions. Like, wait for me to contact you, or basically what his standing orders were after he finished building Merlin's tomb and all that, So after that, he kind of just like tooled around the world and just sort of like collected magic spells for his charm bracelet, and had all these kind of fun adventures. I think they even referenced like touring the ruins of Babylon to find and fighting monsters and stuff. But at a certain point, Merlin must have said like, be around and await my instructions. And he must have sensed that the troll hunters were, obviously there. So he was like, okay, this must be finally time. And he was beyond frustrated when Merlin showed up and then never bothered to talk to Dukesy, and instead was focusing all his time and energy on the troll hunter and stuff. So he was like, well, what do I do? Like, he told me to wait until he calls on me, but maybe I could just and ultimately he decided that his the compromise is like, maybe he could just kill a gum or two and nobody would care in the Battle of Killhead, or the finale of Troll Hunters, rather.
Oh my gosh, poor dude. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question, though.
It did. Thank you so much.
Sure. All right. I'll just keep going. Gosh, I wish that there was a list of how long people have been waiting, but I'm trying my best. Okay, Bombtails, hello. Can you hear me? Hello? C-Bomb. Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I'm very nervous.
No, don't be nervous at all. This is all for fun.
You don't have no idea how I'm nervous. My question is, if the King Arthur was such a horrible person to his sister and the magical creatures, why did Merlin protect him so much?
So the reason that Merlin and the Lady of the Lake, gave him Excalibur and such, was Arthur wasn't always so hateful of magical creatures, but it wasn't until Gwyn died at the hands of Stalkling that his heart began to harden, and he became more obsessed with like being protective of his people, and sort of declared open war on, or becoming more aggressive, I should say, with the expanding the borders and driving out the trolls that he perceived as a threat. But in those early days, Merlin, I think, in his time map or his future sight or what have you, he foresaw that Arthur being king and ruling his people would lead to the Battle of Killahead, which would create a lasting peace, at least for until the far flung future when he would need to call upon Jim. So Merlin, having seen that path to a lasting peace under Arthur's rule, did everything he could to try to make it the least terrible version of that, because he was like, you have to have faith. If I can just have Arthur, lead his people at the Battle of Killahead, and I can build this amulet to empower the good trolls, then that will be the way that we can finally get that sort of League of Nations, as it were, and bring a lasting peace between the magical and human worlds. So that's why Merlin, I think, I don't think Merlin was thrilled at all with the direction that Arthur had taken, but I think Merlin also felt like he was in the best place to try to temper Arthur's worser instincts, as someone who clearly needed to go to therapy but didn't have that opportunity in the Middle Ages. He thought that he could it all work out and the ends would justify the means. Shake Merlin and say, like, look, empowering bad people that was sort of it's up to our younger heroes to tell them that you can't you really can't just sacrifice lives or happiness or justice for the sake of the greater good all the time. You have to draw a line, and if that's the only system that you're dealt, then you have to break the system and come up with a new one. And that's the sort of philosophical answer to your question. I hope that that answers it.
Oh, holy shish kebab. Thank you. I have all the questions.
All right. Well, thanks for your question.
Yeah, I have another question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Talk. Thank you. Claire is Hispanic, right? And her grandmother is Mexican. So maybe it's Claire is Mexican, or I'm crazy.
No, Claire is definitely Mexican. Yeah, Claire is meant to be Mexican. She's the Nunez family are absolutely Mexican, but she is like third generation, so she's pretty well integrated into California society. But her whole family is definitely supposed to be Mexican American.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
Well, glad I
Thank you.
I could provide that clarity. Have a good day. All right, let's keep going, I guess. Trying to find people that maybe have been waiting for a little while. Let's try Charlotte McIntosh. Welcome to the stage. Can you hear me? Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, hi. Sorry, 1 second. My thing was playing up. Hi. How are you?
I'm good. This is quite fun.
It is indeed. I'm a little bit late joining, so apologies if my question was asked. But first off, I want to say thank you for being part of a really amazing show and fandom. I grew up wanting to be an animator, and so watching it really sort of inspired me even more. And I recently just finished my 3-year animation course at university.
That's amazing.
And yeah, I got my housemate into it. And funny enough, the film's coming out the day before I graduate. So it's a little early graduation present, pretty much.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
And it really does like inspire myself and many other people to do animation. And I wanted to work at DreamWorks since I was a little kid. So hopefully one day it just inspires me to work on my animations and just work harder, I suppose.
Sure. I mean, when I was a kid, I was just a farm boy who grew up between two cornfields. But I had my local Blockbuster and I had cable television, and I knew that somebody somewhere out there was making these cartoons and movies that I loved watching, and I was like, I guess technically that means maybe I could do it too. So after I went to college for it, and then after I graduated, I took the leap and moved to LA, I came out with a bunch of other people that I thought were equally talented and ambitious, and we all just kind of like were there for each other as a support network, and just kept at it. And eventually, we made some cartoons ourselves, and I got noticed by some folks, and then I started getting my scripts sent around town through my friends and whatnot, and got an agent and a manager. And then, here I am, I almost 20 years or 16 years later, something like that. And I'm doing it for a living, so it's great.
Wow. And you're doing a great job as well, by the way.
Thank you.
So the question I wanted to ask is, when creating a show or like an episode or the series, what's your progress with creating the whole thing in terms of starting with like an idea and through like post-production or pre-production to like the final thing that like Netflix shows? What's the progress with getting everything done and dusted?
Sure. Yeah. So I answered a similar question to this, but I'll review it very quickly, which is basically, it's like, first you start with just the materials of whatever the show that was bought, whether it's like a pilot or at least a pitch Bible that kind of says, here's our characters and here's kind of the story we want to tell. So then once you kind of have all that, on Tales of Arcadia, we obviously had a lot of that because it was being developed as a movie. Then we were like, okay, what goes into a season? And then once we figure out like, okay, but here's our characters' story arcs for the season, then we'll start dropping in like sort of one-off episode concepts, sort of called story premises or springboards, of where they might fit into those character arcs. And then we'll get down to the business of actually breaking the episode. So then when you break the episode, you'll kind of sit down, looking at all the bills that you have to pay from the previous episode, like, dangling threads or cliffhangers or revelations that need to be unpacked in this episode. And then also you have this wish list of just fun stuff I want to see. And then we'll kind of brainstorm on both of those things. And then at a certain point, we'll kind of hover around, okay, if the premise of this episode is Claire is possessed, what needs to happen for that? So then we'll break that into sort of 4 parts, like your setup, your sort of inciting incident, the complication, and the resolution. And then once you've kind of broken those out of like, what are your 4 beats, the 4 main beats, then we'll usually break it out that even further into, okay, what are our 8 scenes or sequences for this episode? And then by the time you've kind of filled in what those 8 scenes or sequences are, you have a pretty good idea if you're already following those 4 episodes. You're basically your beginning, your complication, and resolution and stuff. You'll have most of it kind of figured out, and then it gets into the granular kind of working out the details of, okay, if this character's here, what's the story arc here? What's the game of that scene? How can we make that fun? And then we'll send somebody off to write it. We'll do revisions, a room pass. We'll send it off to network. That gets approved. Then the storyboard artists take their crack at it. Then it gets cut into an animatic with voiceover records, more adjustments based on that. Then that is shipped overseas, along with 3D modeling and design work that's happening at the same time. and then eventually you'll start getting layout and animation back, then lighting, then special effects, then score, and all of that takes about a year.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, it's a very slow moving process for sure.
Oh yeah, believe me, I know. Animation can be very slow indeed.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask another question, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
In terms of like episodes that you've worked on, what was the most challenging one to do that you've worked on?
I mean, probably the most challenging one, if you can believe it, was the Quagawumps episode, or the Fragawumps. Like the episode where they go, the Shattered King, I think it's called. Because that we were trying to do like a musical, and there's like introducing a new like sort of tribe of trolls, and there's like a storyline with Toby, is mistaken as their sort of reincarnated king, and there's the business of Angarot showing up, and the Creeper Son, and it's just like there were so many moving parts, and it was like really hard to get right. And I think that one went through so many different variations of it. And the other thing too is like it's really hard to sell a musical episode when you don't have the music yet. So when you're watching the animatic, you're like, this sucks, because there's no music. And then it's not until I think it was Tim Davies, our composer, finally was able to like come up with a really fun song and musical number and stuff, and it actually tracked. And it's amazing how much that the score really just kind of elevates everything and makes it all click together. But that was probably the hardest one, I would say.
Yeah, the oh sorry. Yeah, the score and like the music definitely on like the whole show was absolutely incredible as well. Like the music definitely makes up like such a big emotional sort of part of it, and I gotta be honest, I did tear up in like certain places because the music was incredible as well. But yeah. It certainly does sound challenging.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's music is such a big part of it. And I'm very much of the sort of Richard Wagner school, which I don't know how much you know about composing, but his big contribution to opera scores, which later was sort of adopted by your John Williamses and Alan Silvestris and stuff, is the idea of the leitmotif, which is just giving like each sort of emotional character, emotional mood or tone or character their own sort of like musical element, so that whenever you call back to it, you've created this unconscious connection with like, oh, this is a moment that's meant to be hopeful because it's Jim's theme that's playing right now, and I thought Tim Davies and Jeff Dana and John Fee all did an incredible job with that. I thought that we're very blessed to have the composers that we did. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. It was very helpful. Thank you. I hope you have a lovely day. And
thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Likewise. All right. I'm just going to keep trucking forward. Okay. How about sorry, I don't know how to Nam Crab. Hello.
Oh my god!
What's going on?
I was waiting and waiting for you to choose me, and I'm so nervous right now.
Well, I apologize for the wait. This app is not the most user friendly, so I don't know how long people have been waiting. So I appreciate your patience.
No, don't worry. I'm just surprised. Okay. First of all, I'm not good at English, so I'm gonna try my best to understand what I'm saying. And
oh, you're doing great.
The second one is like I wasn't the only one to wanted you to ask this, because a lot of my moods that are here right now wanting you to respond this, but they were so shy, so I was the brave one, and I'm here.
Okay.
So this is the first question. I saw that you liked one of my tweets saying that if there's if there's a couple in the LGBT community in Tales of Arcadia, and I'm asking like, Steve and Ellie are one of these couples. Those couples. I'm sorry.
I mean that's a question that I've been asked, and we've all been asked incessantly. I think from the beginning. I'll give you a short answer, and I'll give you a long answer. So the answer is yes. There are LGBTQ people in Tales of Arcadia, just as there are in the real world. A few of them have been canon confirmed. Like I think Zadra, I think we confirmed is in a same-sex relationship. And we've also confirmed, obviously, you see in the show that Shannon and Conrad are in a relationship. As far as Steve and Eli goes, I know there's a lot of people on both camps. I personally prefer to leave it open for audiences, for headcanons to decide one way or the other. I will say this. I will say that their relationship, I think, is very deep and personal, and whether that is romantic or aromantic is up to you. But I have my own thoughts on the matter, but I don't want to lay down a specific thing one way or the other, because I know there's a lot of Staja people as well, and I think they also have a very specific relationship. But yeah, that's. I hope that's a satisfactory answer. That's the best I can give.
I mean, okay, it's a good answer. I accept it. And the second question is like, if we have a change to see Joel in the movie, if it doesn't matter if he's alive or it's just a remember. I mean, I'm just wanted to see him. If there any chance to see him, Joel. I'm talking about Joel.
Right. Well, I mean, you saw him again in Wizards. He was there, right? As far as the movie, I unfortunately can't tell you who shows up or who doesn't if it hasn't been already announced yet, because that would be violating my NDA. But here's what I will say, just globally, as far as like who shows up or who is around, and or who's like in significant roles or just cameos or whatever in the movie. Like there's only so much that they could do to satisfy every single person's like desires of who they wanted to see and who they couldn't in the film. But the upshot is that the series is always there, right, to go back to and revisit and relive again and again and again. And I think when you see the movie, you'll see what I'm talking about when I say that. But that's what I like about any franchise, is like whether you have a favorite character, or especially when you have like a fandom as vibrant and resilient as this one is, you can kind of live in these in rewatching them and exploring new ideas with them through fan canon and fan art and whatnot. And I think with Drawl, yeah, I mean, of course, I think I just answered a question where I was like, I wish he had lasted until the Battle of Killahead, or rather the Battle of the Morgana at the end of Troll Hunters. But there's who does show up and who doesn't show up. I think that's up in the air. That's fair to say.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. I mean, both of my questions were spoilers, so you respond perfectly, and I'm so grateful that you choose me as. So thank you.
Sure.
That's it.
Okay. Thanks for asking some questions. All right. Zamira, hello. Can you hear me? Zamira, are you there? Hello? I think that you might need to hit unmute on your phone if you can hear me. Zamira? Hello? Testing, 1, 2. While we wait for just a moment to see if Zamira hops on, I think I did get a couple of questions on. Oh, are you here? Hello.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes. Hi, how are you?
Oh, I am very excited and nervous about I'm not very good at English. I'm Russian.
That's all right.
So I have one question. Stuart has learned a lot during his 6 years on Earth and managed to work almost everywhere. So Zoe and Lucy has had much more time to self-study. How much do they know and can do? Besides the fact they were engaged in music and magic.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It sounds like the connection is just a little spotty. I couldn't quite hear your question. You sounded like it was about Dukesy. Is that right?
I'm sorry. One second.
Okay. Sorry. Just the connection broke up a little bit, and I couldn't quite hear what you were asking.
So, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you much better now.
My question. Stuart has learned a lot during his 60 years on Earth and managed to work almost everywhere. So Zoe and Duxie had much more time to self-study.
Yes.
How much do they know and can do besides the fact they enjoyed in music and magic?
Yes. Okay. So yeah, I think Dukesy in my mind was very much like a sort of a jack of all trades, master of none. You know, emotionally speaking, he was sort of like in a state of arrested development. You know, very much sort of a teenager at heart. He never really wanted to get down and get a real job. You know, so he would kind of like go from place to place and think sort of interest to interest as he saw his fancy. You know, so it was something. I think that he knows a lot. He knows very little about a lot of things. Is probably the best way to describe Dukesy. You know, he's at least heard of magic spells, and he's probably had every job that you can imagine over the centuries of him waiting. You know, I imagine he was like a troubadour for a while. I think I've joked that maybe he moonlighted as a physicist, pretending to be Albert Einstein for a while. He's probably hung out with royal people. He's probably hung out with crazy people. So I imagine he has like a lot of like little skills, but he never really knuckled down to do the hard work. He'd rather just kind of find that next magic spell that will answer a new question for him, or solve make an easy fix rather than sit down and become a master of any of them. And so that's kind of where he is at the top of Wizards. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Wait, I have second question.
Okay.
Did Zoe and Duxie dye their hair on their own, or is it magic?
So I think Claire and Dukesy do dye their hair. I think Claire just was using regular hair dye, and in my mind, Dukesy uses slore juice to dye his hair. So, and then when Claire's hair turns white, it's because she was using shadow magic, but she had not really gotten any magic lessons on how to do her magic, so it was wreaking havoc on her hair follicles. So that's why her hair had turned white. I hope those answer your questions.
Wait a second.
Hello?
One second.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, while you look at that, I guess I can answer another question that maybe I got. Someone said Steve could rule Aja with Aja on Acaridian 5, and would he be a king? Yeah, I don't know if that's quite how the royalty works in Equity in 5, because they have sort of the kings and queens in waiting. So it seems like it's not necessarily the same system as we have for kings. So that was a question from Ruben. I also had a question. Let's see what else I have. Unless and feel free to hop in when you're ready to when you have your own question. By the way, ready. Let's see. Oh my gosh, there's so many questions that people are putting on Twitter about asking me questions. Oh, people are saying thanks for making me cry about Drawl. Sorry, I'm trying not to. Local necromancer asks, will Dukesy still be grieving? Is Dukesy still grieving by the time the movie rolls around, or over it completely? You know, I think he had some closure with Dukesy, and that was nice. I'm sorry, with Merlin rather, in the Light Realm. But I think he's still like any when you lose anyone, it's a slow process. Okay, Zamira, did you have another question, or can I move on? Hello?
Okay, important question. Ellie grew up and became taller than Steve, or easy, or did we all think
you're asking
has anyone already
so you're asking
asked this?
So you're asking if Eli grew up in Rise of the Titans. You'll have to watch to find out is the answer. But there is something different about Eli. You are correct. All right. Thank you for your questions. I appreciate it. All right. I'm going to keep going. Hi, Sophie, or Lena Sweet. How are you? Can you hear me? Hello?
Hola.
Hello.
Hello, Aaron.
Hi, I can hear you.
Hi, hello. Sorry for my English because I don't speak very well, but I ask you a question, two questions.
Sure.
I mean, how did you come up with the name of each character? For example, Duxie or Arg, where did you get the inspiration to name them?
So Arg, I believe, came from the books. That was an invention from Guillermo. And then I think Dukesy, his original name came from the idea that just hinting that maybe he had sort of like a royal lineage in Camelot, like the Duke, or I think he was originally called maybe Duke, and then when we realized that we wanted to give him a more elaborate sort of wizardly name, I believe that was Guillermo came up with the name Hazardukes, which sounds a little bit like Hazardukes, which is French for hazardous, which is very appropriate for his character. And as far as like the other characters, it all just kind of felt it. We would try out names of what we thought maybe like, oh, this character feels like a Mary Wang, and then we just the room would just decide if that's what felt right. Toby. We knew Toby's last name started with a D. We knew his name was Toby D, but we didn't know what his last name was until we were brainstorming. And then Samantha Wasson, who was on the crew with us, one of her best friends growing up, his last name was Domzalski. And she came in and said that name. And as soon as she said the name Domzalski, we all knew that was what Toby's last name was, Toby Domzalski. Because it sounds totally like an 80s, character. And then Steve Palchuk, I think we knew the character's name was Steve, but Palchuk sounded just like the right kind of like, I don't know, sort of like ogreish kind of like bully name that somebody who'd be so self-assured. You know, Blinkus Galadrigal was again. We started with Blinky, obviously because of his eyes, and then kind of elaborated like what could be the fun kind of elaborate version of that. We even kind of made fun of ourselves a little bit when we revealed that Strickler's real name was Stricklander, Waltolomew Stricklander. That was sort of an inside joke of our habit of taking what seemed to be normal names and then making them unnecessarily long and complicated. Waltolomew Stricklander is still my favorite. And yeah, a lot of it really is just instinctive when you're naming a character, and you say it aloud and you say it in sentences and you think of nicknames for them and that sort of thing, and you see what just feels right. And that's pretty much how we did it.
And I ask you a question about how do you feel about all this that is happening to you? I mean, making a film. Have you ever imagined living something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly dreamed about it as a kid, I guess. But I do always, when you're in the thick of making television, sometimes you do have to kind of step back and realize you're breathing, rarefied air, as they say. Like it's a privilege to be able to tell stories for a living. So I am very grateful every day, even when it is frustrating or there's a story point that I can't quite get to work right, or I got a note that I have to do that I don't like, or whatever. It's one of those things where I do step back quite a bit and quite often, and just think about how lucky I am to be able to do what I do. Yeah. So that's my I guess that's my answer. Thank you for your questions.
Yes, and I have one more if you
Sure.
can.
Go ahead.
Do you have any advice from the Toa fandom about their dreams? I'm so emotional. So sorry for that question.
No, it's totally fine. So my advice is just keep making cool stuff with cool people. That's how I came up. I surrounded myself with the most talented people that I knew personally and whose aesthetic jived with mine. And just tried to do stuff. I performed sketch comedy. I made short films. And today the barrier to entry is so much lower than when I was even doing it. Like, you can shoot on HD with your phone. You can cut it together. You can upload it to YouTube or TikTok or Bing Bong or whatever comes out next. Like it's just about being creative, and then eventually you just keep trying to make the next thing a little better than the last, and eventually you'll find your tribe. You'll find those people that really respond to what you're doing, and you'll knock on doors until your knuckles bleed trying to break in or what have you. But you'll hear a lot of no's, but it only takes one yes. And in the meantime, you just keep doing it yourself and don't ask permission. That's my advice.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron, for everything, for that and for everything.
Absolutely. Thank you for your questions. All right, I'm just going to keep trucking along. So, all right, how about Mariana Luna Sunshine? How are you? Can you hear me? Hello? Mariana, are you there? Testing, 1, 2. Rubber baby buggy bumpers.
Oh yes, hi.
Hello, hi.
Hi. Yes, here. I'm like here again. My question is if we're gonna have like a reuniting, Barbara and Jim. That's my question. I mean, like if you can answer it, like that's okay.
I mean, there's only so much I can really say, but yes, Jim and Barbara will reunite in the film. You will see them together talking. So don't worry. Okay. All right. Thank you for your question. All right. I'll ask. Trying to see if anybody who hasn't spoken yet. I apologize for your wait. Hello, Bia. How are you?
Hello? Hi. Welcome to the Q&A. Hello? Bia, can you hear me? Hello? I can kind of hear you, but I can't hear you asking questions. Hello? Are you there? Oh dear. I think maybe the connection is bad. Yeah, I apologize, but I can't. I don't think we can hear you speaking. Let's maybe gosh, I don't know. Maybe just try tweeting the question at me, and then I can try to answer it when you tweet at me. I apologize. I think there's no connection here. All right. Sorry. All right. Hello, Rumi. How are you? Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi, I can hear you. How are you? What's your question?
Oh, I didn't think I would go next. I just wanted to thank you for being a part of this saga, and it's been really meaningful to me because I started watching it when I was 15, and now I'm going to graduate from high school, and it's going to end, and so it's like a full circle to me. And
Wow.
it's very.
It's like you grew up with the
And I just
characters.
yeah, and I just wanted to thank you for creating all these stories.
Well, thank you very much. I
and
can't take credit for all of it, but I certainly appreciate it on behalf of the crew.
Yeah. I have two questions.
Sure.
Well, in Trollhunters, we see that Merlin lost his power because he fought Morgana and locked her. And then in Wizards, we see Duxie doing that, and he didn't lose his magic. So I wanted to ask you if Duxie is more powerful than Merlin because of that.
Well, I like to think that Merlin kind of softened Morgana up a little bit, as it were. Like Merlin used all of his power, but he didn't quite have enough to fully kind of drain her and finish the sealing spell. So, I think Duxie maybe has the potential to become as powerful as Merlin, and in some ways he can do things that Merlin cannot because he is so freewheeling and Merlin is so rigid. So I don't think on paper, in terms of power scale, Duxie is automatically a better wizard than Merlin, but he has the potential to become as powerful as him. But the reason he was able to finish the sealing spell is because Merlin had already laid the groundwork of the spell, but he just ran out of magic too early, and so it was up to Duxie to finish it. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, that makes total sense. And the other question I had was, why is Three Below called Three Below? This is something I always wondered with my brother, and I wanted to ask you that.
I think that the idea, I didn't work on Three Below, but my best understanding is you have Aja, you have Krell, and you have Varvatos Vex, and they are all below the stars. So that's sort of the simplest way to understand it. And it just sounds interesting, I guess. I think that's maybe why they went there. So because from their perspective, they landed, and Earth was below them. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
All right, take care. All right, I guess we'll just keep going. Suki, how are you? Hello.
So I just have one question, and I'm really sorry if this has been asked before, but so since Duxie dyed his hair blue, has he ever dyed his hair any other color before?
Almost certainly. I'm sure that he must have gone through a period of time where he dyed his hair every single color. and then some.
Every single color.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My sister, when she went to college, there was a sort of running joke in my family that every time she came home, her hair would have been dyed a different color. So I imagine she would be a little bit like that, or that Dixie would be a little bit like my sister, where like he went through a bunch of experimental phases trying to figure out what his look was, and eventually settled on just two blue dyed tips, or what made most sense to him.
Okay, that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, just keep going. Cryptid Paint. Hello, Rebecca. How are you? Can you hear me? Testing. Are you there, Rebecca? Rebecca, hello?
Yeah, hi, I'm here. Thanks of all. Thank you so much for choosing me, and thank you to you and all the people that work on Tales of Arcadia, because it means so much to me. I joined the fandom quite late, like last year, but it has helped me a lot with a bunch of emotional issues I had, and I feel like it brought me and my father a lot closer together as a family, and I'm really thankful for that.
That's wonderful to hear.
I have two questions, and the first is if Arg is more fluent in troll language than he is on like any other human language, or if he's just, like a man of few words in either language.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of different answers. The book answer for that is that I think when Arg was fighting, as a gum troll or what have you, or there was a stone lodged in the book. Arg was a girl brain that caused her to speak slowly, even though she could understand words. In ours, we didn't want to go quite that far, but our thinking was that kind of what you said, that the Krubera trolls, with the exception of their queen, Userna, are trolls of few words. But Arg, especially because he was kidnapped by the Gum-Gums as a whelp, and raised just to be a warrior, like a child warrior. So he didn't really get the education that Blinky perhaps did with all of his brother's books. So that was sort of the idea. Is like he has a good heart, but he doesn't quite have the same vocabulary that Blinky does. And in that way, they kind of fill in each other's strengths and weaknesses, and that's why they're such a good pair. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I love that they're both like complements of each other. That's super cute. My second question is, if you okay, so the first time Merlin saw Jim, I think he said something along the lines of Jim being taller, I think, or older. I don't remember what he said exactly, but I was wondering if that had to do with the fact that Merlin saw Jim like back in Camelot as a troll, and if that's the reason why Merlin turned him into a troll.
Yes, I've heard that theory before, and I quite like it. I think no matter what, Merlin 100% saw images of Jim and or troll Jim in his future sight, right? He knew going into this that Jim would have to become a half troll in order to survive the fight with Morgana, and so that's what's guiding a lot of his sort of. Even though Merlin does tend to play his cards pretty close to the chest with his plans, because he knows if too many people know about them, then they might try to divert his plans, and it makes it harder for him to control fate and manipulate it so that he gets what he thinks is the ideal outcome. So in my mind, yes, Merlin did see images of Jim as a hero, but didn't have all the details, because as we say, it's just glimpses of possible futures. It's not that he sees all the timeline laid out. He just knows, for this to happen, I have to do this, and then I'm going to show up here, and then maybe do that at some point. So in my mind, he must have seen a future where Jim Jim would need to be a troll in order to survive. Whether he was expecting him to be a troll, because of his interactions with him in Wizards, that's something we definitely wanted to play with as this weird sort of maybe he had this sort of like double memory, of what would be versus what could be. But that's the fun about magic and time travel and stuff. That sort of weird timey-wiminess is something we drew from the books written by that were called the Once and Future King, and in that story, which was later adapted into the Disney The Sword and the Stone, bit saying, "Oh, I didn't realize this is the last time we would see each other because it's the first time that you meet me." So it's sort of like that weird, like, wait, how do you live backwards? And Merlin would constantly just sort of like make weird allusions to how Arthur was going to be king and how great of a king he was. And then sometimes, even in the books, he would like talk about how automobiles were cool. So basically, he had all this future knowledge. So, but that's definitely intentional of us trying to say, like, oh, how would a person who has seen glimpses of the future act around people as he's effectively deciding their future for them? And that was a reference to that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. All right, let's try Zamira again. I think, Zamira, can you hear me? Hello? Hi. Yes, I can hear you for a second.
Sorry for suddenly leaving. Bad connection.
Oh, I can hear you now, just fine.
Now everything is okay. Important question, который я не задала до этого. Ellie grew up and became taller than Steve, or didn't think? Has anyone already asked this question?
I think someone did maybe ask that question. I can't say too much about it because that's about the movie, but yes, Eli is different. I will say that, and you'll have to watch the movie to find out why.
And it seems to me, or did he change his glasses? Maybe he got an upgrade.
You'll have to watch the movie to find out. If you can't, you can see in the trailer he is a little different though.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, thank you for your question.
So, thank you for answer.
Yes, absolutely. All right. How about Nicole? Hi, Nicole. How are you? Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Oh my god, hi.
Hello.
Thank you for choosing me.
Sorry for the wait. I'm doing my best, but as I said, this app is not the most user-friendly when it comes to this.
Don't worry, no problem.
Did you have a question for me?
Yes. My question is, when is Jim's birthday?
Well, I didn't want to specify specifically when his birthday was, but in my mind, it's like I think in the show, he has his 16th birthday at the beginning of Troll Hunters, and Troll Hunters starts pretty much at the beginning of the new school year in sort of like mid to late summer. So like that would mean his birthday, I think it would be somewhere in like the early fall, maybe late summer area. Like, depending on when you want it to be. We never really wanted to say specifically just so we didn't get tied down to that stuff. But he turned 16 while he was rehearsing for the fall play, to give you an idea.
Okay. Thank you for answering.
Sure. Okay. I'll do next. Do I think you've been waiting for a little while. Ivy? Hello? Hi. Welcome to the Q&A.
Thanks for having me. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to be picked. I just want to say, first of all, thank you.
Sure, I'm happy to be here.
The series and the characters, and just this opportunity to, I guess, get some insight on how you made them. And I've got a few questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Sorry. I guess now that Tales of Arcadia has come to an end, what will you miss the most about working on it?
Oh gosh. I guess I would probably say a combination of the people and the characters, because you spend so much time with these characters, they kind of become, in a way, like kind of part of your family, and also just for the people that I've gotten to meet over the years, well, either because of the show or through the show, are things that I do miss having that sort of camaraderie of just everybody kind of like in it together to tell this story as great as possible, and it was just one of those rare elements where like everybody was just sort of on the same page, and we're all just they all kind of got it, and everybody, it was not a competition. It was just a matter of how can we make this story as beautiful and wonderfully told as possible, and it is one of those sort of those rare magical moments that I'll probably miss the most. But the people as well are just but it's not like I don't know those people anymore. So that's so I guess in terms of what I miss, I'll miss the characters, I think, the most, because they are kind of like, it's you know how sometimes you have friends that maybe you knew in elementary school or something, and you can maybe not see them for a little while, and then you'll come back and slip right into a conversation with them as if no time had passed. That's a little bit what it's like whenever I was writing these characters. So I think that's probably what I'll miss the most.
Okay. I guess a favorite character arc or a favorite story arc. I guess you enjoy writing the most.
Yeah, I would say in terms of like the story arcs, the one that was probably the most fun to write was the second half of the first season, the anger rot. Anger rot is a really dynamic sort of villain or anti-villain, depending on who you ask. It just felt, it was just very liberating, and we had to do a lot of really fun and interesting stories, before we got sort of like pulled into the end game, as it were.
Yeah, season 1 was really enjoyable to watch. I think that's my favourite so far. I guess, sorry, one last question.
Sure.
That is sort of more about writing in general. Do you have any advice for people who sort of want to write and want to create but don't have a lot of faith in their original ideas?
Well, here's the thing about original ideas is, I believe it's Ecclesiastes that says there's nothing new under the sun. And that's absolutely true. Everything that I've ever written is standing on the shoulders of giants. And it's me being inspired by my favorite stories, or having a dialogue with them and saying, okay, we have these assumptions about what a hero is. We have assumptions of what makes a good Star Trek show. We have assumptions about all kinds of things that are just purely based on our own taste or subjective opinions or things we happen to be exposed to that inspire us. And we're like, oh, how can I ever make a Star Wars or whatever? But at a certain point, I believe it was Albert Einstein who said that creativity is just hiding your sources. So, and that's what it really comes down to, because it's okay to be like, in your mind, derivative, because you are having a dialogue with this giant swaying tower of culture that came before you and will continue after you.
Yeah.
And so to not engage with that is sort of a fool's errand, because it's impossible. We all came from somewhere. So I think the important thing is, okay, you figure out, why do you like this story? What is it about? What are you trying to say with that story? What is this character's journey, and why is it speaking to you? What's the thing that they want, at least in your pilot? And across your series, and then what is it about of it, and say, well, what is that a metaphor for? You know, whereas like Wizards, for instance, was on its surface just like, oh, they're just going back in time, and and they're having a crazy time bending adventure, right? That's kind of the hook. But the theme of it was, you can't change the past, but you can learn from it to build a better future, right? So that's that.
Yeah.
So it's like, just if you can take those kernels of ideas that excite you and just kind of just engage with them a little bit. Don't worry about not being original, because nobody's really original. But by the time you put your own spin on it and answer those questions in ways that excite you, it will be original. It'll be because it'll be made by you, and it'll be speaking to your personal experiences as a creator. And and sometimes having things that are familiar aren't such a bad thing. Troll Hunters started in a very familiar place, but all it was just a springboard for us to start to have a dialogue with those 80s action heroes journey types stories. And by the end of it, I think it became something very different. And that's why people like you enjoy it so much.
Well, thank you. It's been really helpful.
Sure. Thanks for the question. All right, I'm going to try to find anyone else that maybe who hasn't talked yet. Sorry, again, I apologize for the format of this. I'm trying my best. Hi, John. How are you? Hello? Can you hear me? Greetings.
Hey, so thank you for having me, first of all.
Sure.
And I think that you know how much Tales of Arcadia means to me by now.
Yes.
Like from answering my question. Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for answering every question, not just from me, like from everyone. Like we're asking you questions like all the time here and over at Discord and everywhere, and you're answering so fast and so many things. Thank you so much about that.
I appreciate that, but I'm just so thrilled that people like this story as much as I do. I'm happy to engage.
Yeah, thank you. So my question for today is like in the third, I think, episode of Troll Hunters, Blinky like mentions that there were kingdoms that the trolls lived apart of humans, like divided by bridges.
Yes.
Is this referring only to the Darklands and like Killhead Bridge, or there were like other dimensions or like other places that the trolls lived there and other bridges, and they just became just the Darklands and just Killhead by the time?
Yeah, I think the original.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the original idea, and I don't know how much we really got into it, was that I think maybe the very, very first trolls, not Blinky specifically, but the very first trolls maybe were born in the Darklands. And then they crossed over to the human world, and brought with them this sort of like bridge dimension magic. But we didn't want to get too much into that because what interested us more was the idea of how, okay, now that they're here, how do they interact, and how do they coexist? But that was the original idea, I think, behind that particular line, was that maybe trolls came over from the Darklands or lived in the Darklands, and they came to Earth because maybe they were attracted by the Heartstones that were there, that were more powerful or something. But we never really got into that because it was more like, now that we're all here together, how does that work? And then we tried to kind of elaborate on it a little more in Wizards, where it's sort of like the Wildwood was sort of like their domain. It's where the trolls lived in peace, and it wasn't until, or not, maybe not in peace, but it's where the trolls lived on their own in places like Dwoza and Tombro. And it wasn't until sort of Arthur's invading forces kind of invaded the Wildwood, in his effort to push back their borders and keep the land of humans safe. He was sort of invading a world of sorts, a mystical forest. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
And were there trolls that like were born into the Darklands, like Northern Enrique, and like spending their whole life there?
Yes.
Until they, yeah.
Yeah. So all the
Okay.
almost all changelings, my understanding, were like, perhaps they were either born in the Darklands or like goblins maybe found tiny whelps and pushed them through the fetches or something. But I think that in terms of like their changeling life, in our minds, like they were created in the Darklands, changelings, and then raised there, and then shoved through the fetch before they got too big to not be able to fit through it anymore as babies. Once the babies were kidnapped or whatever, and then went back to replace them. So that was sort of the idea.
Okay, thank you. And one last thing, like kind of a weird question, but you said that you didn't exactly work on Rise of the Titans, like writing the movie, but you like were communicating with the people writing the movie
Yes.
to just align it with Wizards.
That's right.
So you know what happens in the movie, right?
Oh yeah, I know. I've seen the film. I helped to develop it.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. All right. I'm just gonna keep going. I think Ferry, you've been waiting a while. Hi, Ferry. How are you? Hello. Can you hear me? Ferry.
Hello. Yeah, I hear you.
Hello.
How are you?
How goes it?
Oh, pretty fine. I'm actually requesting. Oh, pretty fine. I'm actually requesting because. Not open her mic right now. Thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think he would consider becoming a chef. I think I can't remember if I mentioned it in another Q&A somewhere, but that was always a possible happy ending we had come up with was that when all was said and done, Toby and Jim would just go off and I guess in this current state they would just take over Stewart's taco truck or whatever, and they would just and have a happy ever after, driving around Southern California making dope tacos for people. so
Okay, that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
He would reinvent tacos.
Absolutely.
So that's an idea. He would probably also get even more accepted by Claire's Mexican side of the family too.
I bet he could probably make some good chorizo that her dad would love.
Oh yeah, he would. And well, I don't have a question of my own at the moment, or nothing that you can answer.
Suppose for the question. All right. Just gonna keep going. Oops. Who did I just hit? Okay. Little potato. Blue. How are you? Are you there? Hello. Can you hear me? Little potato. Testing. Hello. Can you hear me? Microphone. All right. Well, little potato maybe figures out the microphone. I'll see if I can find more questions here. So Justin LaFriend says, "Hello, Aaron. Jim and Claire both have an epic moment. Have you ever brainstormed a Toby moment with that song?" I mean, I think we had joked that maybe we would have that moment when Toby whips out his warhammer and smashes Angkor Wat the first time. But I think that we always try to give characters a certain little moment. There's also Toby had a moment where he saves uh, he saves his girlfriend in the finale of Troll Hunter. He saves his girlfriend. Hello, Lotus Beth or Pal. How are you, Paulina? Yes, I can hear you. What's your question?
Well, first of my questions, I want to thank you for having written and created this amazing saga, you and the whole team. The truth is that I have identified a lot.
Oh, sorry, you broke up just a little bit. What was your question?
Well, I have two questions.
Okay.
Well, the first, do you have a favorite moment of the whole saga that makes you cry or scream?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this before, but I think that the ending of Unbecoming makes me very emotional. I think that's probably some of the best I've seen. And then, as I mentioned before, I think the when I was writing the drawl.
Oh, well, and the other question. Well, this question I have always asked myself. In the Troll Hunters, in the chapter Mistral and Hero, against whom is Jim fighting in the deep? Because I have an idea that he is the same, but with what the first most is losing his humanity.
Yeah.
Sorry, my English is no.
No, you're absolutely right. That was he was facing his greatest fear, which was a deep-seated fear of losing his humanity. So that is what he was facing. And I think they explain in Three Below that the reason that was manifested was because it was a safeguard that Kanjigar had put.
Oh, thanks. I have the question. Always ask myself. Sorry,
Well,
I'm so nervous.
Well, it sounds like you're absolutely correct. So good job.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, thanks for the question. All right, I'll just keep going here, I suppose. Charlene, how are you? Charlene, can you hear me? Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I from Chile. It's pretty special. And my question is, why is we about that for this area? Always is so because producing animation, I like to talk with. What about this?
Sorry, you broke up just a little bit. So you're asking about Juxi?
Yeah. Okay. What about this is weird nomination taste of okay? Why I'm so happy they you did speak with different action. I do at everyone to that.
Um, I'm sorry, you broke up just a little bit more. I couldn't quite hear what your question was.
Yeah, just being sorry, but I used to speak.
It's okay. Sorry, are you saying
What?
were you asking if there's any chance of more of Juxi? Is that what you were asking?
One about the animation is supposed for this in the go on in more adventures action creators maybe go on and go on everyone to that about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of in animation. There's a lot of if I'm still having a little bit of trouble hearing you through the speakers. I apologize, but you were asking about would the stories keep going or like about the
About the always everything changed.
oh, I see. Oh, like what had changed when they went back in time? Or is that what you're asking?
Yeah, another question is what's that about the movie? We decide for more discover for new action on Wednesday.
I'm afraid I can't talk about the movie too much, but you should be excited for it for sure. Um, and I think it's going to be uh, a good time had by everybody. That's about as much as I can say about the movie, though.
Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you. Thank you,
Okay,
Aaron.
thank you. Take care. Okay, so I guess I'll try Little Potato again since I think we lost a connection there. Little Potato, are you there? Hello? Oh, I can hear you now.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Aaron. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Sorry about waiting. It's because for some reason I left the space. I don't know why. I couldn't even hear you calling me.
Oh, it's all right.
So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I just have one more question.
Sure.
And if you were a creature in the troll universe, which one would you like to be? Like a troll, a half troll, or maybe a wizard?
I would be a half troll, changeling, half Acaridian wizard,
Oh my God.
wizard, mermaid vampire.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Sure. All right. How about Alan? Alan, are you there? Hello. Alan Deca, 18. Hello. Welcome to the Q&A.
Oh my god. Thank you.
Did you have a question?
No, question no. I'm very sorry. I do not speak English.
Oh.
But I'm pleasure to be able to interact with you. I have many questions, but I will not to ask them because we are not going to understand. Each girl again to pleasure to able to interact. I'm sorry, my English is terrible.
It's totally fine, and I can hear you actually just fine. But I appreciate you coming on, and if you ever have any questions, feel free to tweet them at me. And thanks for watching the show.
I don't know to understand you.
Oh, I was just saying thanks for watching the show, and I can understand you. I understand what you're saying, but if you don't want to ask the questions right now, it's totally fine.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Take care. All right. Let's try. I think Fruit Crow's been waiting a while. Fruit Crow, are you there? Hello, Crow. Are you there, Fruit Crow? Perhaps he or she or they fell asleep. I have been going for a while. Um, let me try someone else in the meantime. How about Marie Guerrero? Hi, Marie. How are you? Hello.
Hi, Aaron again.
Hi again.
I actually have three questions.
Okay, go ahead.
One is from Angel,
Okay.
and give me 1 second. I will read it first in Spanish. I became the official translator for the Toa Twitter.
Okay.
And the question in Spanish is, I will translate it in English after.
Okay.
¿Algún día pensaste que el relato de Arcadia llegaría tan lejos y sería tan importante para millones de personas alrededor del mundo? And then the translation will be, have you ever thought that Tales of Arcadia will go as far as it did, and it will be as an important thing for millions of people around the world? And talking about that question, thank you for working on this. And 2000, I discovered Tales of Arcadia in 2019, and when I was having health problems on my own,
Mhm.
and it really helped me get through. Especially, I saw myself through gym a lot.
Mhm.
So thank you for writing this amazing show. And so that is my first question.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for sharing that. That is really wonderful to hear that the show kind of helped you get through some rough times. That's all I can, as a creator of anything, that's all you can really hope for, right? That's why we do this. So that's nice to hear. Um, uh, yeah, as far as like, did I ever think that the show would ever be as big as it was? I I I don't think I was arrogant, but I was definitely very optimistic, and I seem to be the only one that thought like, well, at the time everyone else was being very sort of like trying to stay grounded. But like, this is gonna be huge, guys. This is going to be valuable someday. People are going to care about this. And everyone else is just sort of like, yeah, okay, Aaron. But here we are, I feel like 7, 8 years later, and now there's, as you said, millions of people around the world really love the show. So I very much, I'm glad that my optimism proved to not be foolhardy. That was nice.
Yep. And then I have two questions from my own.
Sure.
And in the book, if I remember correctly, Jim's last name was Georges.
That's right.
And then on the series, it's Lake. And what made the change, and how do you guys come with the last name Lake?
So I believe the original thinking behind it was as an homage to Arthurian legend, which was, as you may or may not know, Lancelot, the character of Lancelot, his last name is Duloc. which means of the lake. So in the movie version, the reason that they were doing that was to nightmare come to life, right? Because in Troll Hunters, we revealed that he was wrong to be so fearful of like his outward appearance changing, and that what made Jim remained inside of him. And then when Beast Jim came about, it was sort of that manifestation of his fear. It was like his soul, as you saw, was trapped and pushed off into the Darklands, or into the Shadow Realm rather. So Beast Jim was sort of like that fear made real if he completely loses himself to that bestial form. So in that way, yes, at the time we were not writing it specifically to reference Beast Jim, but when we wrote Beast Jim, it was referencing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And thank you for answering the 3 questions. And
Sure.
thank you for spending almost 3 hours with us.
Look, y'all got me to 10,000 followers. I'm going to make it worth everyone's while as best I can. I will have to probably hop off at 4:30, but that will be 4 hours I've been going. So yes. But thank you for your questions and for hanging out.
And I kind of see myself with Claire. I am American Nicaraguan.
Yes.
So I'm Hispanic and I am American, but I have lived in Nicaragua most of my life.
Very cool.
And in the U.S., some of my life I studied there, and now I'm living in the U.S.
Well, welcome.
So that is almost. Thank you. And this is kind of interesting to see, although Claire's stories are a little bit different from mine, but that's cool.
Yeah, I think she was definitely supposed to be Mexican American, but in many ways she was supposed to be sort of a third generation, immigrant family. So we tried to make it that a lot of the stories, while they had some specifics, we tried to make them universal too. So that's cool that you're here. You certainly arrived in America in a weird time. But then again, I can't think of a time that America wasn't weird as hell. So welcome.
Thank you. Right now, I'm actually in Nicaragua visiting the parents.
Oh, and I'm sure they're like America. How can you go back there?
Yeah, I am. But I am going back in several days.
Okay.
Working from home.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, and then also like the James speaking Spanish, it's just like the highlight of the show.
I'm glad. Because some people were nervous about it.
Anton just nailed it.
Yeah, well, some people were nervous about it, but I was like, no, the fun is like he's being earnest. He thinks that he's speaking Spanish to try to connect with Claire, and he's just bad at it.
Yeah. And I started speaking English as a second language. I kind of not too late, but kind of. So I can kind of relate.
Well,
a bit.
I will say you speak English way better than Jim speaks Spanish, so you don't need to worry about that.
But I get like a fit of laughter when Jim tries to talk to Claire.
Good. I'm glad that it translates well. Hasta huevos, as Jim would say.
Hasta huevos, yeah. That one.
All right.
No.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Bye.
All right. Let's try Nanners Ruth. How are you, Nanners?
Hi.
Hello.
So I have 2 questions.
Sure.
And I don't know if they've been answered yet because I've been popping in and out of this a lot because I have company over.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you
But
neglecting your company to chat with me.
yeah, thank you for doing this. But one of my questions is Merlin said that Jim's troll farm would be permanent.
Mhm.
So was your decision to make him human again always a decision, or was that a last minute decision?
No, it was. I mean, it was always a thought that Merlin, even though Merlin speaks in resolution in resolute like sort of absolute statements, we've seen Merlin be wrong before. We even saw him be wrong in Troll Hunters when he thought that he was sort of blindsided by Morgana, right? Um, so like I think that was something we wanted to play with in his characters. Like, why do we think that this is permanent? Because Merlin said it was permanent. And the theme of wizards was always you can't, in order to truly save the world and change it, you cannot just accept what the previous generation has told you is possible or impossible, because magic is about doing the impossible, and young people can change the world if they just dare to dream differently than their forebears. And so that was kind of like our thought, was like the only voice of authority we had on that particular aspect was Merlin himself, who we show again and again, even though he meticulously plans for everything and, genuinely believes that his way is the only certain path forward. It's because Merlin detests uncertainty and tries to plan for everything and tries to manipulate fate just so that it hits the one thing that he thought was the only solution forward. Like the same with Duxie. Like he said, the only way that I can foresee, everything being uh, safe is if you take the seals and just abandon your friends and just run. This is the last ditch effort. There's no other way out of it. And Juxie said, no, like maybe the one thing that I have to do is give up the thing that you never thought you would ever give up, which is these seals, that because I'm thinking differently and saying it doesn't matter what futures you may or may not have seen. If you disrupt the system, disrupt the cycle, and just believe in other people, then you can achieve anything, right? So that was sort of the thinking behind it. Was like we always knew, like, yeah, Merlin is in those final moments was saying this is permanent. This will always there's no going back. And I think in that moment for Jim, for him to make that decision, he had no other choice. He had to take a leap of faith and believe Merlin. But even back then, we were trying to make Merlin somewhat unreliable. He isn't likable and he is deceptive and he holds cards too close to his chest. So, I think that sort of playing with reliability and authority and a willingness to question authority while accepting maybe the issues they're trying to solve was something that was always at the forefront of our minds as we wrote Troll Hunters and Wizards. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. And then my other question, this might be an odd question, but I noticed in Troll Hunters that Claire's hair appears mainly to be dark brown, but in Wizards and the movies it seems very much black to me. Was that an intentional change or?
I don't know. I think it might have just been with the updating of the models. Um, I think sometimes with lighting too, there'll be sort of like colorations that change a little bit with the saturation. I think the main thing that we changed in updating their models for Claire and whatnot was obviously the white streak in her hair and her hairstyle. So that was in terms of like making her hair darker from a brown to a black. I'm sure that there was maybe some thought behind it. It might have simply just been as technology updated and everything, the shading just changed a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, I hope that I hope that was a satisfactory answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, I think I have time for a few more. I'll try to get through as many as I can. Let's try. I think Rizal or Crow, you've been here for a little while. Fruit Crow, hi. Hello.
Hold on. Oh my god, this damn mic!
I can hear you.
Oh, you can?
Yes.
Sorry. um, I I don't know if you tried me again before. You might have. My phone kind of glitched.
Oh, well, I
But
can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry. You probably heard my yelling.
It's fine.
So I had two questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, so the first one, what was your favorite like character design that you've seen?
My favorite character design. Honestly, I thought the Arcane Orders designs were freaking awesome. I loved them.
Yeah.
Um, I also really love Bular's design. I thought Bular's design, as far as like a crazy troll, there's so much detail. I have a rare, um, it's about a 2 foot tall maquette of Bular. It's really heavy. It's like a maquette statue of him.
That's cool.
And you can see every detail on like the skulls on his belt and like every notch in his sword, and he's just a really cool design. I believe that Bular's design originally was Gunmar's design, but we were like, we're not going to see Gunmar for you know most of the series, so let's just use that cool design for Bular. Um, yeah, I mean, I also Edgar Rot. I thought there's a lot of elements of his character design, which is pretty cool too, with like the roots coming through him, and like seeing bits of magic stone underneath him glowing. That's cool. And then the Morgana's armor is always been really cool. And I do feel like somebody maybe saw over at the Wonder Woman team maybe saw our show and and was loosely inspired by it. It seems a little too close for comfort, in my opinion, to the Wonder Woman's new gold armor in the second movie. But those are my favorites off the top of my head.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. So my second question, this one's a little bit like random, but like it's kind of just been on my mind. And I forgot to ask it earlier. So what's up with Strickler's office? Because it's originally his office, but
Yeah.
then later on it's used as like the principal's office. Was that like supposed to be like intentional, or did I don't really know how to word it. I'm sorry, but
No, no.
yeah.
So basically, if you recall, in I think the second 13 episodes, Strickler comes back after being defeated at the Battle of Two Bridges. And he comes back and he unleashes an Entra Monstrum on the principal and then becomes the new interim principal for that season. So I think he became sort of like the acting principal, which we were like, it's a little bit of a stretch, but who cares? Like, it's fun just to have Strickler pretending to be the the principal, just to torture Jim while he enacted his vengeance or what have you, with Anger Rot. So that was I think the thinking behind it. As far as like, and then after he left, I think they just were like, yeah, I'll just keep using that as the principal's office, I guess.
Oh, okay.
The production answer, I think, is we didn't have the money probably to design a brand new office, so we just had to reuse what we could.
I kind of assumed that.
Yeah. But I think in terms of why Strickler would keep his office while acting as interim principal, I mean, he does have that cool secret changeling room back there. So my guess is that his first act as principal would have been like, no, I want to keep my office because that's where I keep all my secret troll stuff.
Yeah, that would be sensible.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. Rizal, I think you've been waiting a little while. Hello? Rizal, can you hear me? Rizal, are you there?
Hi.
Hi.
Yes. Hi. I'm not good talking English because I'm Mexican. I can answer you, and I hope you can understand me too.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. I got two questions. One's about Jim, and the other about Clara. Bueno, Claire.
Okay.
First is Jim fan of How to Train Your Dragon, or why he does have a screen cover of Toothless?
Are you asking, is he related to Hiccup from our How to Train Your Dragon? Is that the question?
Yeah, it's Jim fan of the series or something.
Oh, is he a fan of the series? Like when he's watching the show? Yeah, I would say he's
Yes.
I think that's probably why it was on. He was probably watching the TV show or the movies. That's probably why.
That's good. Yeah, thank you. The other, was Clara born a sorceress, or she just became one?
Right. So when it comes to magic in Tales of Arcadia, we didn't want it to be that only some people are born with the ability to use magic, right? Because, and we've even seen in Troll Hunters, anybody could in theory use magic. Like I think even Toby speaks an incantation, Jim does, Strickler does. So like when you do magic in Tales of Arcadia, you are tapping into the ley lines of the universe and you're channeling the energies of the universe in order to cast a spell. However, uh, the more complicated the spell, the harder it is, right? So, so some people just like in real life, we have child prodigies or what have you that are suddenly super good at one particular thing. Like Mozart was really good at the piano from a very young age. He just, for whatever reason, his brain was wired to be able to, play a sonata after hearing it once when he was like 5 years old. In that same way, uh, some people are more adept at doing harder spells and have a natural affinity for certain types of magic than other people. And those people, with a little bit of training and practice, go on to become wizards and they become master spell casters. Does that make sense?
Oh, it's cool that it maybe is related to Morgana when she told her sister or something. I watched the show in Spanish, so I don't know
Yes.
how he called her, but I don't know.
Yeah. To that sort of to what you're saying and what I was saying before. So Claire and Morgana both were born with a natural gift at being good at shadow magic. In theory, you know, Merlin and Duxie could maybe do shadow magic, but it does not come naturally to them. It's very difficult for them. And Duxie even says, like, I was never good at that, but you are. You have a natural gift for it. And so that's perhaps what Morgana was alluding to there.
Oh, thank you very much. It's really nice to meet you.
Sure.
Thank you for answering.
Happy to. All right. I have time for maybe a couple more. I'm going to try to get through as many as I can. Sophia, hello. Welcome. Can you hear me?
Working because
Yes.
I'm currently at a Walmart.
Oh.
I'm currently at a Walmart, so I'm using data, so it might not sound so great.
Well, I
think
can hear
I
you.
think I sound down. Okay, cool. So first of all, thank you for having me speak for now. Thank you for your contribution towards Dixie, my favorite character. He has completely changed me. I'm kind of known for being the Dixie fan now, which is, it's nice.
Sure.
Yeah, I appreciate the Dixie fan. Anyway, so my question was, so if you, let's say Netflix gave you the chance to have Tales of Arcadia have a crossover with a franchise, what franchise would you like it to have a crossover with?
If like with any franchise or a DreamWorks franchise?
Yes, anything, absolutely anything.
Oh gosh, that's a tricky proposition. Indiana Jones, maybe, I guess. That'd be pretty wild. Because there's enough.
I'd love to see Dixie as Indiana Jones.
Yeah, because Indiana Jones was such a huge influence on this, and I feel like there could be sort of a little bit of a way you could cross it over, I guess, because so much of Indiana Jones was like a normal scholar of a man of learning who sort of ventures out of his comfort zone and then finds there's a secret world of artifacts that may be created by gods or aliens or whatever. So I feel like that maybe would be kind of a cool crossover. I think How to Train Your Dragon is sort of like an obvious one. since we kind of were always sort of tiptoeing around that possibility throughout the series. Ooh, gosh, I don't know. It'd be fun to do like I don't know, like a Steven Universe crossover, I guess, maybe. That'd be fun.
Oh my god, that'd be so cute. I would love that.
Yeah. In over their heads managed to turn, villains over to their side. I feel like Nomura and Peridot would have a lot to talk about in that regard. But yeah, I guess that's my answer.
All right, thank you so much. Have a good day, and again, thank you. Again, this means so much to me, so I want to thank you for everything with him.
Of
So, yeah,
course, my pleasure.
thank you.
All right. I think I have time for maybe two more. I apologize to everybody I didn't get to, but if I didn't get to your questions, feel free to tweet them at me, and I will do my best to answer them later. So I'll do like one or two more. How about Amy? Are you there? Amy? Krell 14? Hello? Amy? Can you hear me? Are you there?
Oh, hey.
Yes. Okay, we
Hi,
can hear you.
everyone.
Hi.
Oh my god. Oh well, this is my question. Is for about the for Krell.
Okay.
And my question is Krell is interested on somebody or he's now in a relationship with someone?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of deferred to my answer to that before is like, if it's not defined in the show, I try not to give a definitive answer because I don't want to step on people's headcanons. We did discuss those possibilities of him being in a relationship with another person. But I don't want to say definitively that he is interested or he's not, because I know some people saw a little bit of themselves as someone who's maybe like Aero Ace in him. There's some people that saw him as as being on the LGBTQ spectrum. So and I also didn't create the character, so I don't necessarily want to define uh, how his relationships are in one way or the other. But whatever you want to believe, I think that there's room for that in the Tales of Arcadia universe. I hope that answers your question.
Oh my god, thank you so much.
Okay, sure. All right, I can do maybe one. I'll try to do two more. Hi, Bia. How are you? Hello, Bia. Are you there? Elsa Glow. Hello, Elsa. Bia. Are you there? Testing. Oh dear. Hello. All right. Since we're low on time, Bia, if you do have a question, feel free to tweet me later because it doesn't sound like your microphone's working. All right. I'm gonna try. I'll try Golf H. I think you've been waiting a little while. Can you hear me? Hello. Hi.
Hey Aaron, my name is Heitor. I'm from Brazil. The first thing I have to say is a very I don't know. It's a mix of good job with thank you because I fucking love the series. Sorry for cursing. uh, it was the first time that I could bond with my little sister, and it was very special to me to watch as a 22-year-old to bond with a 8-year-old child. We would watch the show and fucking love it.
That's
So
really nice
my
to hear.
question,
Because when we
Yeah,
made the show, we specifically wanted to make it as something not just kids would like, not just adults would appreciate, but something that everybody could watch together. Like that was straight up our goal from the beginning was let's make a show that we would want to watch too, and would be fun. Specifically what we were aiming for. So I'm very glad to hear that you.
favorite thing that you had to cut off or it wasn't included in the show? And once again, thank you.
Sure. So, I think my favorite thing that we had to cut from the show, a lot. Usually, it was just like little jokes and stuff like that. Sometimes it was extended scenes. I think we had a section where more we had an idea that like Claire and Morgana in Wizards might be trapped in the Shadow Realm for like half an episode and almost like a bottle episode where be forced to get along. But unfortunately, we had to trim that down quite a bit. I also would have I mentioned it earlier. We had talked about maybe they would go back to the Wildwood in present day, and see that. All right, take care. All right, I'm going to do one more, and then, as I said, if I didn't get to ask your questions, just tweet at me, and I will do my best to answer later. So, um, let's see. I'll try Nina. Nina, are you there? Hello? Can you hear me? Nina? Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi. So I'm a little nervous. Sorry. Okay. I have a question.
Sure.
I just wanted to know how it works, the changeless creation. It was something really open, I think, and I was really curious about how it works.
Sure. So I think that in Troll Hunters we were very vague about it. We just said I think Art just frowns and just says messy business or something like that. And then you see hints of it, I think, in Wizards, right? When you see a Gum Gum get sort of created from nothing, from like a stone by Morgana's magic.
Yeah.
When they like burst out
Yeah.
of this. So, you know, there's basically what happened was, after Morgana sort of like showed that she could create these changelings or whatever to Gunmar and them, but then she was, in her mind, unexpectedly defeated at the Battle of Killahead and sealed away, and then the Gum Gums were pulled into the Darklands. they spent centuries trying to recreate that magic formula or what have you, of trying to figure out how Morgana created these changelings, knowing, at least in their mind, that they could find these little cracks in the Darklands that they could use using the fetches or what have you to try to slip changelings out and orchestrate Gunmar's return. So they spent centuries trying to figure it out, and eventually they found like a way to kind of jury rig the basically sort of like a ramshackle, less perfect version of of changelings, but they would do it by kidnapping human children as a base and creating a soul bond with them and swapping them out. And using the energy of the Darklands itself to sustain the connection, the magical connection. So that is how they did it. Like the reason that they need babies was because they were doing sort of an inferior version of the spell, and using the power of their prison, the Darklands, to the corrupted Heartstone to keep the spell going. So when the Darklands collapsed, the energy source keeping the spell going collapsed with it, and all of the changelings reverted back to their troll forms. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Can I do another question?
Sure.
It's kind of related. How did it works like the human version of the changelings when the time is passing? Like the trolls get old really slowly.
Right.
Like in relation to humans. So how it works for the human version of them?
Right. So this is another thing that we had talked about at length, perhaps ad nauseum, in the Troll Hunters writers room. No, not in this Q&A. In the writers room.
Okay.
No, in the writers room back in the day, because I was asking that very question way back in 2014, which is like, how does it work? And ultimately, I think I decided it was sort of like, what do you call, like a parabolic curve or something like that, where the first few years of a changeling's existence as a changeling, their human bodies would age more or less as a human's would. But then as they got closer to maturity and went through teenagerdom and then into young adulthood, their aging would begin to slow and become more troll-like as their trollish features kind of took hold. So that's why Strickler at a certain point started to look sort of like middle-aged or what have you, because he's been around for a little while, for like a few hundred years, or a couple hundred.
Yeah.
And so like he had to, at that point, he had to just kind of move town to town. When similar to how
I always thought about it.
Yeah.
How they keep their lives in the human world. Okay, that makes really much sense.
Sure. Well, happy to answer. So
Thank you.
Of course. All right. So yeah, I think I do have to go. I've been at it for about 4 for you to ask a question directly. Tweet at me and I'll try to answer the question if I can. And yeah, thanks again everybody for following me, getting me to 10,000 followers. That's why I'm doing this. It's just like a fun little treat, I guess, for me to interact with you and you to interact with me. It's been a delight. Take care, and I'll see you around the internet.